the Town of Cary's Government Access Channel.
Call to order the July 26th meeting of the Cary Town Council. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Robison, who will provide our ceremonial opening.
Okay, please join me in pledging allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're now at agenda item A3, which is the adoption of the agenda. I propose two additions to this agenda. Ms. Adcock has talked to all council members individually about switching the dates of the September 13th council meeting and the September 6th operations committee meeting. This action would result in a council meeting occurring on September 6th and the operations committee meeting occurring on September 13th. To give staff and the public ample advance notice, let's add this to our agenda tonight as item H5. And the second item, Mr. Shiver has a report for council, so I request adding a town manager's operational update to our agenda as item C2. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda with these two additions?
So moved.
There's
Mr.
a
Mayor, I'd
motion.
like to move an item from the consent agenda. Is that?
We'll get to that. We're not at
Okay.
consent yet.
I'll provide a second to that motion.
Okay, there's a motion second. Further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're now at the consent agenda portion of tonight's meeting. That's item B. For the benefit of the people watching our meeting on TV, we'll take a moment to read our consent agenda items. I'll point out that one vote approves all consent agenda items. On the regular consent agenda, we had approval of the minutes, a resolution authorizing staff to apply for a state revolving loan for the Cary Apex Water Treatment Plant expansion, a resolution for issuing revenue bonds, the July tax report, a condemnation resolution for the Southwest Street Utility Improvement Project, and an amendment to the April 14, 2011 council meeting minutes. And now I'll ask Ms. Robison and then Ms. Adcock to briefly tell us about the committee items on the consent agenda. Ms. Robison?
Okay, thank you very much. There were 9 items underneath the consent agenda from the Operations Committee. The first one was the raw water transmission parallel pipeline project, in which the committee unanimously recommended approving the review committee's recommendation to negotiate an engineering services contract with HDR Engineering. The second item is the downtown roundabout project, in which we recommended approval and execution of a condemnation resolution to secure necessary right-of-way and easements for the downtown roundabout project. The third item is the consideration of right-of-way closing, in which we recommended approving a resolution of intent and scheduling a public hearing for right-of-way closing. The fourth item is the property interest for 127 West Chatham Street, in which we recommended approval and execution of the quitclaim deed relinquishing the town's interest in property located at 127 West Chatham Street. The next item was the funds transfer, the lofts at Weston Lakeside SPE LLC in town of Cary, in which we approved transfer of $140,033 from ST 1173 traffic signals to ST 1191 Weston Parkway, Winstead Drive. And this is for a project for the transportation and intersection improvements at Winstead Drive. The next item is Contract 3, the Administration and Maintenance Buildings. We recommended awarding Western Wake Regional Wastewater Management Facilities Contract 3, Administration and Maintenance Buildings to Central Builders for $2,939,000. The next item was Campo STPDA fiscal year 2013 grant funds, in which we recommended entering into agreements with NCDOT for 4 competitive grants from the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to receive STPDA grant funding. The next item was the Retiree Benefits Policy 110 update, in which we recommended approving proposed revisions to Policy Statement 110, Retiree Benefits. And the last item was the Raleigh Interconnection and Emergency Water Supply Agreement, in which we recommended approving the interlocal agreement for the installation of interconnections and transfer of water line agreements for emergency water supply. And this has to do with having better connections between Cary and Raleigh, so that should anything go wrong in either of the two cities, we have connectivity to provide water to our citizens. So it's a very good project.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Adcock.
Yes, the following 4 items were approved unanimously on the July 18th Planning and Development Committee meeting. The first was Davidson Point request to make a payment in lieu of road improvements. Second, easement conveyance to Progress Energy. Third was a public hearing on Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan update to be held on August 23rd at a regular council meeting. And the last was the lease agreement for the Jones House, in addition to unanimously recommending adopting a resolution authorizing this lease. The committee further directed that the town manager negotiate and execute the lease on behalf of the town.
Very good. Thank you. At Mrs. Bush's request, we'll remove item B1E from the consent agenda, which is the condemnation resolution for the Southwest Street Utility Improvements Project. We'll discuss this as item H6 on the agenda. Would council members like to pull any other items from the consent agenda for discussion? Finally, I'll point out the consent agenda item B2C sets a public hearing for the right-of-way closing. We'll keep that item on the consent agenda. Council's approval of this item on the consent agenda will also authorize staff to set the public hearing for September 6th instead of September 13th if the council changes the date of the council meeting later at tonight's meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to approve all items on the consent agenda except item B1E.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're now at item C1, recognitions, reports, and presentations. The Capital Trees Program recognition, and Mrs. Lois Nixon of the Regional Appearance Committee will make this presentation.
Hello, Mayor Weinbeck and council members. I am Renee Boyette. I am the Assistant to Executive Director at Triangle J Council of Governments and staff to the Regional Appearance Committee. And tonight we're going to make a presentation from the Capital Trees Program. The program began in the city of Raleigh. It was expanded to Wake County and then was moved to Triangle J and is administered by the Regional Appearance Committee. The Capital Trees Program was established in 1993 to promote the significance of trees in Wake County. Its overall goal is to draw attention to the most noteworthy trees in the county and to provide education about the tree canopy and the roots. This was especially important as we celebrated the United Nations International Year of Forest in 2011. Since the program began, we have recognized over 250 trees. 21 more trees are being recognized this year throughout the county. All of these award winners are added to the Capital Trees Honor Roll and can be found on the Triangle J website. Members of the Regional Appearance Committee and the Capital Trees Awards Jury include volunteers and local government staff. The awards jury is made up of professional arborists and foresters. With me today is Lois Nixon, a longtime member of both the Regional Appearance Committee and the Capital Trees Program.
Good evening. It worked. We present awards in 4 different categories, and they are on the screen. One is champion. These awards are based on size, using the measurement and point system established for state and national champion trees. And one of our nominated trees' potential total must be at least 75% of the state award tree in order to be considered a champion tree in Wake County. The second is historical. Nominees must be at least 50 years old to qualify, and the trees must be specifically associated with some significant historical event or significant historical place. Then landmark, the emphasis is on natural groupings or communities of trees rather than individual trees. And finally, meritorious, and trees in this category are potential future trees in the other categories, and we call them the wannabes of the other categories. But they might be a special climbing tree or a tree of special color or something. Now for the award for this year's tree, and when we make the awards, we give a plaque to the owner as well as this plate to put on the tree. If Linda Young is in the audience, I'm not sure she's here, but if she is, I hope she'll come forward. This year's tree is a special one to us, and particularly special this week. It is on the Herb Young homestead on Old Apex Road, and probably everyone in the room knows that his funeral was earlier this week, and so we're very sad about that. But he was a very strong supporter of Cary, of parks, and which all of you know about, but you perhaps didn't know that he was also a tree lover. And one tree is already on the property there, closer to the house and the swimming pool, but this tree, as you can see, is out near the road. He left quite a legacy in Cary, and we hope that this is an additional tribute to him in addition to others that have happened this week. He was very interested in the nomination of this tree, and he and his daughter Linda nominated it last year. And he was notified before his death that it had been accepted and that the award would actually be presented tonight. This white oak receiving a historical award is found on Old Apex Road in front of Herbert Young's home and was nominated by Mr. Young and his daughter Linda. In the photo, you will note members of our awards jury being trained on how to conduct the evaluations for the Capital Trees program, and we do update training about every other year of our awards jury so that there's consistency. This tree is a companion, as I said, to another tree on the property closer to the swimming pool that received a Capital Trees Award in 2000. Miss Young remembers this tree being a landmark when she was a child 50-plus years ago. And she also sent us a photo of this tree in the winter with snow, and the road in front of the tree was dirt. So it was a long time ago. And that photo will be linked to this tree on the Capital Trees Honor Roll website, which is on the Triangle J website. And I don't think she's here, but we will get the award to her. This is the end of our awards presentation, only one tree this year. Thank you for providing the time on your schedule. Nominations are now being taken for the next awards cycle in 2012 and 2013, and the nomination forms can be printed from the Triangle J website. Just Google Capital Trees Program and it will come up. On that site you can see previous trees that have been given awards as photos, as well as a little bit of information about them and where their location is, and can print the nomination forms. So I would love to have more Cary trees next time, so that's our challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for being here and for the presentation, and I really appreciate you mentioning a pillar of our community, Herb Young, in his passing this week, and our thoughts and prayers are out to him and his family. So thank you very much once again, and hopefully we'll have a lot of trees for you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 2. At the beginning of the meeting, we added this item C2, to our agenda, which is the town manager's operational update, and I'll recognize Mr. Shiver at this time for his report. Mr. Shiver.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to mention 3 items to the council this evening. The first of those is an item that actually appeared on your consent agenda that I would just like to highlight to the council, our members, citizens in the audience, and also those watching at home about the Raleigh Interconnection and Emergency Water Supply Agreement. And I appreciate Ms. Robinson also pointing out and highlighting a few things about that as well. And the reason I want to do this is because it really represents, I think, a significant achievement for us as well as the city of Raleigh. Over the past years, we have always assisted each other, but our capacity in emergency situations has been limited. And we've had some difficulties for a variety of reasons, some technical, some otherwise, in trying to come to some agreement on how we're going to make that connection better so that we can better serve not only Cary citizens, but it also has a dual purpose of serving Raleigh citizens, potentially Holly Springs citizens, and even others as we extend these interconnections. So I was very pleased that Council approved the interconnection, and it also contains one additional feature that I hadn't highlighted in the past, but that is the Emergency Water Supply Agreement. We also have operated without a firm agreement in place in the past. And as it turns out, in situations where we needed water to exchange water, it worked fine. We worked very well. But this gives us a greater measure of security, less risk, that we have a document in place that will govern our interconnections all over the system. The staff report also notes that we are members of the Jordan Lake Partnership, along with many local governments surrounding the lake. I believe that partnership is one of the principal reasons that we were able to come to this agreement and work through this with Raleigh. So it's a great benefit to us. It will ultimately be a great benefit to many other people in the region as well. So I'm grateful for Council's approval of that item, and I think it's worth pointing out and putting a little more emphasis on it. The second thing I would like to mention is something we began just about 1 year ago. It's a customer service survey that we did in Inspections and Permits, launched by the Department of Inspections and Permits. And it's an effort to improve the ways that inspection and permits deliver services, specifically by trying to understand better the customer's point of view. So we allow each customer that we interact with to give us feedback on how that interaction went. And the survey, I do want to point out, the survey is not a scientific survey, so it is customers that we have interacted with. We have asked them to respond. In some cases they don't. In some cases they do. As of the past year to date, the data that we have now includes 291 responses. And on a scale of 1 to 9, where 9 is the highest score, we've scored an average rating of 8. We also have a lot of data that has given us good information about areas that we might be able to improve. And the responses come from a group of customers that includes everyone. It's homeowners, small business owners, large contractors, trade professionals, design professionals, and many others. We've talked about efforts to improve our customer service, and specifically in the more regulatory areas of inspections and permits, both fire and in the department that we title Inspections and Permits for the general building code issues. And this began probably the first of a number of different things, and we'll report to council in subsequent meetings some other things that we're doing to move that forward, such as focus groups with small business leaders, the development community, citizens, to see how we can better serve, or how they see, how do they see obstacles to getting their business done with the town and how we can better serve them. So you'll be seeing more reports on that. But I did want to report this to the council because it's almost exactly a year old since we began it, and to date, from the responses we've had, they've been very positive. And we have a lot of data that will be very helpful to us also. The last thing I would like to mention briefly is that longtime town employee, Valeria Willis, our HR director, as you know, is retiring from service after almost 27 years with the town, over 13 years as the Director of Human Resources, and today we had her retirement party. Those are always sad, but happy times too. We're happy for her and her new step in life, but also it's a sad time because we'll be losing V, who has done a great deal to shape this organization, our organizational culture, and the benefits and everything that we provide to our employees. And because of her impact and her importance to us, I just wanted to let the council know that we had that, and it was an excellent reception for her. We saw a lot of faces we hadn't seen from retired employees, as well as folks from around the state, all over. Some came as far as Charlotte to thank V for her service and to recognize her professionalism. So I just wanted to share that with council.
Thank you.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
She'll certainly be missed. Those are big shoes to fill. We're now at item D, excuse me. Our next two agenda items, item D, Public Speaks Out, and item E, Public Hearings. We've included instructions for speaking at these forums on the printed agenda. If you'd like to speak, please take a seat in the rows to my right that are shown as reserved and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers have up to 3 minutes for their comments, and speakers may speak on any topic that is not listed as a public hearing under item E of the agenda. I'll have to enforce the 3-minute time limit to be fair to all of our speakers. There's a timer located on the podium, which is highlighted, and for the first 2.5 minutes, that timer will be green. For the last 30 seconds, it will be yellow, and at the end of 3 minutes, it will flash red, and at that time, I'll interrupt you immediately and ask you to conclude your comments. I thank all of our speakers in advance to adhering to the guidelines that I've set forth and that the council has set forth. I would now like to open up Public Speaks Out for anyone who would like to speak on an issue that is not a public hearing tonight, and I would invite the first speaker at this time to approach the podium via the aisle to my right and give the clerk your completed contact card. First speaker, please.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Jim Wallace. I live at 1107 Carpenter Town Lane, and I'm here to respectfully request the Town Council adjust the final concept master plan for Carpenter Park to eliminate vehicle access from Carpenter Town Lane. I'm a board member of the Carpenter Village Homeowners Association for the last 5 years. I'm a graduate of your Town of Cary School of Government and the newest member of the Cary Public Art Advisory Board. I mention this because my motivation here is to support Cary and my community. I'm delighted that Carpenter Park is coming to fruition, but shocked at the addition of a vehicle access to Carpenter Town Lane. My home at 1107 Carpenter Town Lane is located in the center of the 1100 block, approximately right across the street from the planned vehicle entrance location. The 1100 block is a vehicle entrance point for many residents of Carpenter Village. One may not realize, unless you lived in Carpenter Village or on the 1100 block, that this section of Carpenter Town Lane serves as a major pedestrian link to Magnolia, West Carpenter Village, Old Carpenter communities that have access to the Carpenter Village swimming pool and other amenities, including a playground located adjacent to my neighbor at 1101 Carpenter Town Lane. At most any time, local residents and children are walking, jogging, biking, walking their dogs along the 1100 block. Our community design and layout places homes and streets in very close proximity to one another. Vehicle access to a public park from our neighborhood street causes immediate concern for vehicle and pedestrian safety, as well as a severe disruption of privacy for homeowners in the 1100 block. Documents indicate that this road access is not required by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. I conclude the existence of the vehicle access road is completely under your control. As an HOA board member in dealing with homeowner issues, I often have found it useful to ask myself, what if I were in this situation? How would I feel? What would I do? So I ask you, council, what if you were in my neighborhood? If this were your street, if this were your home, how would you feel? What would you do? All things considered, the vehicle access
Mr.
road
Wallace, I'm
doesn't
sorry to
make
interrupt
sense.
you. Your time has expired.
I thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Jim Wallace.
Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Could you move to your left just a little bit?
Sorry.
To your left.
The other left.
There you go.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Vin Linga. I live at 1103 Carpenter Town Lane. My house at 1103 Carpenter Town Lane is basically in front of this access road that is presently on the plan, on the access plan. This is an access road which I understand from your own records is not necessary or required by DOT. Please understand the real and detrimental effect that this planned access road onto Carpenter Town Lane has had on my house sale. Some of you already know that I had a sale pending and it fell through because of this access road. By way of background, the buyer, he was a PhD and he's a professor at the School of Architecture at NC State. He walked away, or by walking away from approximately $2,500. He had due diligence money in, he had house inspected, and he had the house appraised. He basically told us by walking away with from that kind of money, professionally and personally, that he did not believe this access road was necessary. This buyer was interested and wanted to wait and see what this council would do. They waited for a while, but at this point, he has moved on and is under contract for a different house. Please note that sale was set to close on July 17th. We found out on July 4th that the sale was terminated. It was set to close on July 17th, and any money that I have spent on my house, I consider to be damages at this point. Since then, every potential buyer that has come through has asked why the scheduled close fell apart. As soon as my real estate agent explains what happened, certainly potential buyers take this into account as they assess the property value of my house. Even today, my agent told me that there was someone else interested, but of course they went and looked at the plan and they actually called the city and tried to get some additional information. They're waiting to see what this council will decide as to this access road. My real estate agent is here tonight because of the importance of the issue onto the property value of my house, and to better understand how to market my house in face of the uncertainty that we face as to this access road. Please also understand that some of the complaints that are coming, some of the concerns that are coming from the potential buyers have to do with congestion on a road, based on the width and capacity of the road, and also, very simply, headlights coming into the house at any time of the night, since my house is pretty much directly across from this access road. Needless to say, the fallout from this proposed access has had a detrimental effect on my property, my sale, and
Ms. Ling,
affects the
I'm
sale of
sorry
my
to
home. Thank you
interrupt
for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Town Council, my name is Greg Heitman. My family lives at 1105 Carpenter Town Lane, directly across the lane from the location of the proposed vehicle entrance into Carpenter Park. My family has young children. We've been looking forward to having this park built since we became residents of Carpenter Village 4 years ago. However, we are opposed to, and only to, the proposed vehicle entrance on our neighborhood street. To help plan this park to best serve our community, I'm a member of the Citizens Design Committee. 2 other committee members, Marie and Rich Anderson, have a daughter, Lauren, that was one of the only 5 survivors on American Eagle Flight 3379 that crashed near the park site in 1994. 15 passengers lost their lives in that crash. The Andersons have been working with the town of Cary for many years to establish a memorial, and the town has graciously offered a spot within this park to build that memorial. As a pilot, and also almost losing my father in a major airline accident, I was captivated by their story. We have kept in touch regarding the design. Unfortunately, the Andersons are not able to be here tonight for this meeting, so they've asked me to read a few excerpts from the letter on their behalf they wrote about this issue. They say that there are so many wonderful ideas that have been incorporated into this park. We are sure it will be a huge asset to your community. The inclusion of the Flight 3379 Memorial at its present location is one that we are very comfortable with. The fact that it is less than a mile from the accident scene is very special, and I'm sure that the other victims' family members will also agree with this proposal. We feel very fortunate that you have allowed a memorial to be included in your park. We have one concern with the current proposal, however, and that is the decision to allow access into the park from Carpenter Town Lane. We were hoping, along with the neighbors who live on that side of the park, that it would not be necessary for cars to enter from that location, but rather to have pedestrian access only. It seems as though the access from Lewis Stevens Road, which DOT has accepted, would be more than sufficient for traffic flow. The addition of more traffic in a residential area where children would probably be crossing, we think is somewhat dangerous. In addition, we are also hoping that this location would offer a respite for those people who could come to reflect and remember those that were lost. Families that were impacted by this accident would come to know that there is a welcoming, quiet area for them to visit if they so desired. We would not want to see anything interfere with your park's creation in any way, and certainly feel that a lovely, quiet, natural green area would please all in the community. Sincerely, Marie and Rich Anderson. So, council members, I'll conclude by reiterating, we all want this park. We simply do not want any vehicle access off Carpenter Town Lane.
Mr. Hyde.
And we're asking for your help. Facts are there. Thank you. The decision is yours.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Council, my name is Eric Sanchez. I appreciate your time this evening. I expect to be the final speaker on the Carpenter Park Master Plan. And I want to say that all of our speakers tonight are supported by the majority of the individuals who live on Carpenter Town Lane. It's worth noting that I myself don't live on Carpenter Town Lane. I live on Roselle Valley, which is just a street off. These are our neighbors. They're your neighbors. They're everybody in here's neighbors. And they're coming to you, in fact, pleading with you in emails and in their presence tonight to ask that you relent from the access road on Carpenter Town Lane. I wanted to read a few excerpts from the documents that staff provided us when we queried about why there needed to be a road on Carpenter Town Lane. I read from Falcon Engineering Report dated February 10th. Entrances were considered on each of the adjacent roadways. They are environmental features such as buffeted stream, linear wetlands at the southern edge of the park site that will make access from Carpenter Park Lane nearly impossible. In a letter from the Department of Transportation dated March the 1st, under more ideal site physical conditions, an access opposite Dominion Hill Drive would have been recommended for further consideration. However, in recognition of the limitations of the park property, wetlands, lay of land, etc., the department is authorizing the requested access scheme. As you likely now know, the only scheme that was presented was a single entrance point at Lewis Stevens. What we ask is not new. We ask for no exception. We come here not to complain. We want what 3 other parks since 2000 have, and those are single access points from one road. We are reasonable. If there's a safety issue that necessitates the penetration of an entry point on Carpenter Town Lane, let it be. None of us want a safety issue. But time and again, we've heard there's no traffic concerns. We've heard there's only 32 parking spaces. Why the concern? Ask yourself why the concern. If the capacity of the park is 32 people, you have nearly that here that say no. Please don't do this. We simply ask that you relent and input the stages that were suggested by some of your membership. Single entry, safety, then we'll open it up. At the end of the day, we want this park. We thank you for this park. It is a gift to the city. We simply want no access from Carpenter Town Lane. The decision is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out?
Glasses are on my head. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council members. My name is Jeannie Olderman, 303 Robert Street. I'm Agenda E under the consent agenda, which Lori Bush was kind enough to pull for me. I'm here, even though I put it in large font, I need to let you know that I am fully supportive and appreciative of the Town of Cary's utility improvements project. In regard to the stormwater drain upgrades, I stand to gain the greatest benefit from this upgrade in terms of relieving the flooding situation on my property. However, I also have the most to lose due to the current structural condition of my home. The results of a structural evaluation of my home on August 16, 2011, concluded that there was extensive damage to my home, delineating reparations including 21 helical piers, and that would be in document 2 that I'm presenting. I was informed that in the event of any future construction on my property, that the area around the house would require reinforcement. I immediately voiced my concerns at the preliminary meeting on March 20th to all involved staff members and have repeatedly expressed my serious concerns for the past 4 months without any acknowledgement or response from staff, with the exception of, number 1, Kurt Worgan, real estate specialist, called me on June 16th and informed me that if I didn't sign the easement forms, that the Town of Cary would take it anyway. Following a call I made to Mr. Shiver and a subsequent meeting on July 3rd, After I was so frustrated that my concerns after 3.5 months had not been acknowledged, I turned to Mr. Shiver. And within 30 minutes of our meeting, he then informed me that they were discussing condemnation. And finally, in a meeting with Mr. Shiver and Mr. Bailey on July 20th, Mr. Bailey then issued a third threat of condemnation. My frustration in this situation is for a homeowner to repeatedly express her concerns to all involved staff members with the engineering department with no response, no acknowledgement, total dismissive of my concerns. In responding to the discussion session on the condemnation resolution, it states...
Ms. Alderman, I'm sorry to have to interrupt you, but your time is expired.
That was 3 minutes?
That was
Wow.
3 minutes. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Do you want to leave other documents? with
I have
the
all the,
council?
I gave her all 3 documents.
Okay, thank you very
so
much.
much.
Thank you. Next speaker for Public Speaks Out, please. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out? Last call for Public Speaks Out. Seeing no one, I'm going to close Public Speaks Out. We're going to move on to public hearings. This is item E on your agenda. The same rules apply for public hearings as they did for Public Speaks Out, with one exception. Instead of 3 minutes, you now have up to 5 minutes to speak. Our first public hearing is a rezoning 12 REZ 11, the Carpenter High property. We're going to hear a staff report, and then we're going to hear from the applicant. We're going to conduct the public hearing, and I expect Ms. Robinson to request that council continue this public hearing until August the 9th, the August 9th council meeting, to allow adjacent property owners more time to learn about this proposal. This time, I'll recognize Ms. Grannon of our staff who will present this item. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you. Good evening. For your consideration is a request made by L-Star Management for rezoning for property located at Green Level Church Road and McCrimmon Parkway on approximately 21.19 acres. The subject property is highlighted in yellow. It's located approximately 2/10 of a mile north of McCrimmon Parkway. It's adjacent to the Waycroft subdivision. Here's an aerial view of the subject property. It has been developed with 3 single-family homes, a great deal of open space, and you can see the proximity to the Waycroft subdivision to the west of the subject property. The existing zoning is residential 40. The property is surrounded on the north and east and south by PDD zoning, and across the street, across Green Level Church Road, also R40 zoning. This slide shows you a layer called PDD equivalent zoning so that you can see that the adjacent property is in closest relationship to R8 zoning because of the setbacks for the Waycroft neighborhood. It does, however, have much larger lot sizes than R8 in the adjacent neighborhood. The proposed zoning that the applicant has submitted is residential 8 conditional use. The conditions proposed by the applicant are a maximum density of 3 dwelling units per acre, maximum of 60 homes, a minimum density of 2.1 dwelling units per acre. The request is that the use be limited to single-family detached residential, that there be a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet and a minimum lot width of 80 feet. And the applicant has also proposed a 20-foot wide perimeter buffer, a type B semi-opaque buffer, along the northern and western property lines to be located in common open space outside individual lots. When 2 developments, residential developments R8 or larger are adjacent to each other, the land development ordinance requires a landscape area, not common open space, so this would exceed the LDO standards. Cary's land use plan designates the subject property for medium density residential, which would be 3 to 8 dwelling units per acre. The site is impacted according to our GIS maps by streams, and field determination would be required at the time of site plan review. This slide shows the proximity of existing and proposed greenway trails and multi-purpose trails in the vicinity. And Cary's transportation plan shows Green Level Church Road as an existing major road, and therefore a 50-foot streetscape would be required by the applicant at the time of development on this road. I also like to point out that with the 60 dwelling unit cap that the applicant proposed, this would not exceed the 50 trip threshold required by the LDO to warrant a traffic study at the time of rezoning. It's possible it might be required at the time of site plan, but a traffic study was not required at this time. Cary's transit plans call for a future C-Tran route along the road. Property owners within 400 feet of the subject property were notified by mail of the rezoning petition. The property was posted and advertised according to the LDO requirements. And there is a valid protest petition. The properties highlighted in yellow show the properties that constitute a land area that would warrant a valid protest petition. Properties highlighted in blue would be outside that 100-foot boundary and therefore would not be valid. Here's a summary of the protest concerns that were submitted by the adjacent property owners. Concerned that there was not a private agreement established with the homeowners for conditions that were not part of the zoning conditions, that the name of the future builder had not been determined. They were concerned that L-Star did not have a history of development in Cary, and that there was no annexation petition submitted with the rezoning request. There were also concerns pertaining to zoning conditions. The adjacent property owners were looking for more specificity on construction materials. They wanted to see a requirement for crawl spaces and basements. They wanted more information about open space designation on the property and more attention to buffer width and performance. Just wanted to point out the town requirement for annexation is that annexation is required at the time of a development plan, or the petition for annexation must be submitted with the development plan. So it is not required at the time of rezoning. So the applicant is aware of this and understands that they would not be able to develop the property unless it is annexed. At this time, the applicant will present the request.
Very good. I'd invite the applicant forward at this time.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Steve Vining. I'm one of the managing partners of L-Star, who is the applicant for this project. Just to give you a little bit of background on L-Star, we're actually one of the largest developers in the Carolinas right now. We manage probably 5,000 lots in the Carolinas at the present time. We have about half a dozen projects. We've been actively pursuing projects throughout the Carolinas. This is the second project where we've come before the council here in the last 6 months or so. We have another project underway over on West High Street. Members of our team have developed literally tens of thousands of lots in the Carolinas and probably over 1,000 lots in Cary itself. We have folks who've worked on the Emberley project and Twin Lakes and many other projects in the Cary area. I think we're a highly qualified applicant for this kind of project, and frankly, we think our approach here is one where, frankly, I think it's a model for what other folks should be doing. Before we filed our application, we met with representatives of the Waycroft community. We understood this had been before the council previously. It had been a controversial project at that time, and we understood that's necessary to work with our neighbors or our future neighbors in a project. We met with the representatives of the Waycroft community and received their list of what they'd like. There were about 15 items or so, and we reviewed those, and frankly, we agreed to all of them. We think they're reasonable, and frankly, think that the way the residents have approached this is a great way. They've always indicated to us that they're not against the project. They don't oppose development of the site. They just want to be sure that whatever happens on the site that's next to their homes is compatible, and we agree, and that we think that what we've proposed is compatible. We've had a series of meetings with the neighbors over the last 6 months or so, and gone through the various items that they requested. And frankly, one of the most difficult issues we've faced and worked through with the residents is how to incorporate what they want into the approvals from the town. You see, there's about half a dozen zoning conditions that are part of our application, and that's certainly one way we can make enforceable some of the requirements or desires of the Waycroft residents. But there's lots of the other items, and I'm gonna hand around a chart which shows the various items that have been discussed and agreed to. There's other ways and things that are not really, or no other items that aren't really appropriate for zoning conditions. Building materials, siding, no vinyl siding, design of roadways and the like. And those are appropriately in a probably site plan review. And there are still other things that aren't even appropriate for site plan, individual landscaping requirements for homes, design requirements for homes. And those are probably best suited for declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which are common in most neighborhoods. We've just literally this morning kind of hammered out in our minds an agreement and a written agreement with the residents and sent that off to them for their review. We think this is the first step, or not the first step, towards the final steps in this process. We understand they're going to need a little time to review that settlement agreement we've set forth to them, and we would certainly agree that this public hearing should be continued till the next meeting to give the Waycroft residents time to review the documentation we've provided to set forth our agreement and a way of enforcing the agreement of all the items that they've requested. I guess in closing, I just want to thank the council, and certainly if you have any questions about how we approach this, we're more than ready to respond to those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing, and I would invite the first speaker to approach the podium at this time.
Hello, my name is Wendy Hyde, and I'm a property owner of the Carpenter land, which has been in my family for over 50 years. Over the many passing years, we have seen the town of Cary grow and develop all around our property. Subdivisions, schools, expansion of roadways, and even highways are a few of the noteworthy development projects that we have seen and supported over the years. We have supported the growth of Cary with the realization that our farm is no longer consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods. Therefore, we have been actively trying to sell our farm now for over 5 years. As you may be aware, we have been negotiating with development companies and have had several failed attempts with the recent applicant, Pulte, which was unable to reach an agreement with the surrounding subdivision, Waycroft. We have recently reached an agreement with L-Star to develop our land. They have expressed that they believe they can reach an agreement with Waycroft and produce and develop a subdivision that is similar to the neighboring developments. As my understanding, L-Star has agreed to many of the neighbors' concerns with the developing of our property. L-Star has gone above and beyond in responding to Waycroft's concerns, such as exceeding the standards of the Waycroft neighborhood itself, and also far exceeding the town of Cary's land development requirements and standards for residential development. When the surrounding areas were being developed, our families never once protested any neighborhood or allowed growth to be established. I feel like L-Star can make a great neighborhood where it would fit into the surrounding communities well. The only thing we are asking of the council is to be able to sell our land like any homeowner should be allowed to do, and that this project would be a great asset for the growing town of Cary. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Christy Albert, and I'm one of the landowners of the Carpenter property. My family has owned and lived on this land for over 50 years, probably long before subdivisions were even thought of. We have watched as the town of Cary has grown up around the farm and watched subdivisions come to be such as Hortons Creek, Evans Farm, and Amberley and Waycroft, which was originally part of our farmland. Our old and memorable farm is now surrounded by these new developments, and we have been supportive and welcomed this new growth of the town of Cary around us. As you may know, our old farm is no longer consistent with the surrounding developments, and as you also may know, we have been actively trying to sell our property now for 5 years. We have been through negotiations with at least 2 potential buyers and have failed because the potential buyers could not reach an agreement with not us, but with our neighboring community, Waycroft. Then L-Star came into the picture, and right off the bat, they were nothing but positive, professional, and impressive. L-Star and Dane, our broker, has done nothing but try to work with Waycroft and accommodate their long list of concerns, which seem to get longer and longer and more specific at every meeting. L-Star has agreed to significantly more than what Waycroft asked for from the previous applicant and has gone above and beyond the standards of the Waycroft neighborhood itself, and far exceeds minimum town of Cary land development ordinance requirements and standards typically required for this type of single-family residential. So in conclusion, I apologize if you can hear the frustration in my voice as I speak about the development of our land and the Waycroft neighbors, but all we are respectfully asking of the town of Cary is to approve the proposed rezoning request, because I believe that the type of development that L-Star is proposing will be a great asset to the town of Cary. Please afford us the opportunity and the right to sell our land like my father did with the property where the Waycroft subdivision now sits. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is C.W. Knott. I'm the taxpayer on 10651 Green Level Church Road, which is in the top right-hand corner of this project. What I have to say can't top what them girls have done told you. That's their inheritance. I got the property from their daddy, which was my friend, lifetime friend, 58 years around that community. You, the people of Waycroft, are concerned about their sales and their property. They don't pay any taxes on this property. It's not yours to decide what to do with it. Believe it or not, we have a future. We have future plans of our own, and they have delayed them long enough. You, the town council, have all the control of what happens here. We can't vote for any of you. We don't pay any Cary taxes. We're forced into your ETJ and under your supervision or whatever, control, so make it happen, okay? This has been going on for 5 years. We're being held hostage on our own property. L-Star has tried to make the Waycroft people happy with all their concerns. Some of them just arrived on the scene, and they've got concerns a dime a dozen. I don't know if it can be done. I don't know if you can make them happy. It's time for a vote for the town council. If you want me to sell my property, L-Star needs to be moving forward. The Waycroft problems have delayed the town's progress in this area. The tax situation that could be coming from the houses being built, the roads could be improved on around there as soon as this takes place, and our ability to make plans for our own family and our future. There's somebody at stake here besides the people in Waycroft. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Crisp, and I am the treasurer of the board for the Waycroft Homeowners Association. I have come here this evening along with several members of the Waycroft community to discuss this rezoning application. At this time, I'd like to ask the members of Waycroft to stand to show their attendance and support. There were many more residents who wanted to be here this evening, but they were unable to come due to travel and work schedules. But I believe you've heard from many of them by email prior to tonight's meeting. Let me first say that our presence here tonight comes after several months of communication between members of our community and the applicant, L-Star Land Management. On February 13th, 2012, well before the zoning application was filed, 4 Waycroft representatives met with the applicant and discussed all the concerns that you'll hear us speak about tonight. Their goal was to work with the applicant as early as possible to reach a resolution so that the Waycroft residents' concerns would be addressed prior to the public hearing. Unfortunately, that did not happen. As Steve mentioned earlier, we have just this afternoon received a response from L-Star in the form of a private agreement, which we have been asking for since the discussions were initiated. Rezoning application 12 REZ 11 is of great interest to the nearly 100 homeowners in Waycroft because this tract of land is bordered on 2 sides by Waycroft and is situated between our community and the Green Level Church McCrimmon Parkway intersection. 2 through streets in our neighborhood will connect Waycroft directly to this new development, and so once everything is developed, these 2 neighborhoods will essentially appear as one neighborhood. Therefore, we have a strong interest in seeing that the new development promotes harmony and continuity with the existing development, and we feel like this is an important element of our discussion here tonight. The residents of Waycroft really are excited that this neighboring tract of land is being developed, and we sincerely hope that L-Star will succeed with this project. However, we are here to discuss a few points that we feel are critical for the success of the project. Although these issues were formally brought to the applicant's attention in February, they do remain unaddressed in the zoning application. And since the concerns we will be expressing here tonight represent the views of our homeowners association, as well as 25 out of 27 Waycroft residents who border the property and have signed our protest petition, we feel like it is important that the council hear Waycroft's united voice. The points we will be presenting include: 1, fear of the unknown because the applicant is not in the core business of developing property, has never developed a property in its own name in this area, and has not provided any details about the proposed builder or builder group. 2, failure of the zoning conditions to promote harmony and continuity within the existing development. And 3, the applicant's unfulfilled promises to provide declarations and a private agreement well in advance of the public hearing for those concerns that we also acknowledge cannot be addressed through zoning conditions. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm going to hand the presentation over to Greg Duffy now, who will speak about our first issue. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present today. My name is Greg Duffy, and I'm here tonight to speak briefly about the concerns of the Waycroft residents I have on account of the applicants. All right, 1, a lack of development history in Cary. 2, the possibility the applicant might be making a speculative land purchase and intends to flip the property. And 3, the lack of detail has been provided about the proposed development. Collectively, the fear of the unknown. And just on that same point, as you heard L-Star talk, it wasn't until this morning they offered us anything. They've been holding out since February. As Kelly mentioned, Waycroft representatives first met with L-Star on February 13th of this year. Prior to that initial meeting, Waycroft residents have never heard of L-Star. Therefore, as part of our dialogue with the applicant, the Waycroft residents did due diligence on the applicant and its founding partners. We wanted to learn what type of communities the applicant developed in the area in the past and learn what styles of home that they build. We were very surprised to learn that this applicant is a relatively new business entity that has never developed a property in Cary, is not in the core business of developing property on its own. And according to the closed deals listed on the applicant website, the applicant's business focused primarily on purchasing distressed properties, with other development companies, as well as brokering the purchase of land for national brokers to build and develop. All these things greatly concern us. Given that L-Star is a relatively new entity and with no development history in the area, we have serious concerns that this property will possibly be left in an uncompleted state. We also have concerns that L-Star might not have any intention to develop the property at all. Rather, is making a speculative land purchase, intends to flip the property, or is orchestrating this rezoning on behalf of undisclosed parties. Waycroft residents raised these questions concerned about fear of the unknown at the initial February meeting and all subsequent neighborhood meetings held by the applicant. And at no point during any of these meetings did the applicant admit or deny these questions concerning its intention with regard to the property. However, 3 possible ways to help ease Waycroft residents' fear of the unknown were discussed. These include 1, providing as much detail about the project as possible, specifically the builder or builder group. 2, addressing as many concerns through zoning conditions as possible. And 3, provision of a recorded declaration and private agreement for any concerns that could not be addressed through zoning conditions. Orly Resnick will speak shortly about the zoning conditions, declarations, and private agreement. Right now, I'd like to spend a minute discussing the lack of detail available about this project, specifically the applicant's failure to disclose the builder to the group. At all neighborhood meetings, Waycroft residents questioned the applicant about who the builder or builder group would be. The applicant provided conflicting responses, first stating that the builder wasn't known yet, then stating everyone would be happy with the builder selected, then stating that they cannot reveal the builder on account of confidentiality agreement the applicant requested that the builder sign. We simply ask today that the applicant provide as much information about the builder as possible. If the builder is known, we simply request that they share this information. For those living beside this new development, like myself, who lives right adjacent to the property, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to see and understand the applicant's vision for this property without knowing this crucial element. And just as a personal note, I'm lucky to be here this week because I was supposed to deploy last week for a year. In fact, I'm going to deploy now in about 6 months. So this continuing event is very cumbersome to me, my family. It's something that leaves us in a lurch of what we're going to do, and quite possibly is that we're going to have to move, just like many of the working professionals in our neighborhood, eventually. So we'd like to know what's going on so we can figure out our future, just like you heard from the Carpenter Village folks earlier today. So in closing, thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you, and I'll turn this presentation now over to Orly Resnick.
Good evening, council members. My name is Orly Resnick, and I'm here tonight to speak about the failure of the zoning conditions to ensure continuity and harmony between the new neighborhood and the existing development, as well as the applicant's failure to provide declarations and a private agreement well in advance of today's public hearing. As Greg Duffy just discussed, L-Star has not yet admitted or denied its true intentions with regard to this property. Therefore, it is still unclear how long exactly the applicant will remain involved with this project. As a result, zoning conditions that are tied to the land and are binding on any future builder, developer, or purchaser are really the only way to ensure that whatever the applicant agrees to actually occurs on the property, regardless of how long the applicant remains involved with the project. At both neighborhood meetings, the applicant agreed to several items that were not included as zoning conditions in its initial application. Those items include 1, quality of construction and construction materials, 2, use of crawl space and basement foundations, 3, restriction on use to either a BMP or open space for a certain area behind Waycroft Woods Drive in order to prevent future subdivision and recombination of that parcel, and 4, provision of opaque screening plantings in the additional buffer. We ask tonight that the applicant stay true to its word and amend the current zoning conditions to address these 4 items which they represented they would. Additionally, there were several concerns raised by the Waycroft residents at all the neighborhood meetings that the Waycroft residents understand cannot be addressed through zoning conditions. Therefore, the applicant represented at all neighborhood meetings that these items would be addressed through a private agreement and recorded declaration. The applicant also represented that these items would be provided well in advance of today's public hearing. However, we just received these items this afternoon and have not had any opportunity to review them. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the Waycroft community. Before I conclude, I would just like to summarize our main points one final time. As Greg discussed, there is a great fear of the unknown associated with this project on account of the lack of detail that has been provided. In order to get past this, we are here tonight to ask the applicant to include just 4 additional items in their zoning conditions and provide a declaration and private agreement that will ensure that whatever the applicant agrees to actually occurs on the property, regardless of how long the applicant is involved with the projects. At all neighborhood meetings, the applicant agreed to do all these things, so we are hopeful that they will stay true to their word and continue to work with us towards the resolution. We are excited by the prospect of this neighboring community being developed. We are eager to see Cary continue to grow, and we sincerely hope that L-Star can be a part of that growth. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this portion of the public hearing?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Town Council members. My name is Adam Ashbaugh. I'm a partner with L-Star Management. The fact of the matter is we have, again, as the Waycroft residents have mentioned, we've agreed to basically their entire list of issues. The question really becomes, at what point, where is it appropriate to enter these things into a document? We reviewed their list of issues with planning staff and followed their advice on what was appropriate to include as a zoning condition. I'm going to briefly just read through. There's 15 or 18 items that they've asked us to agree to, and I'm going to point out where these things, again, with discussion with town staff, where these are appropriately addressed in our application. Lot size, minimum of 10,000 square feet. We've included that as a zoning condition. Minimum lot width shall be 80 feet. These are the resident demands or concerns. We've agreed to that, and we've included it as a zoning condition. The minimum lot setbacks, they had asked us to meet or exceed the minimum lot setbacks that Waycroft has. We've agreed to that. In fact, the zoning that we've requested, the setbacks already exceed that. So we didn't need to include that as a zoning condition. It becomes a part of the plan, based upon the zoning. The quality of construction, the use of similar building materials to Waycroft. We think that that's more appropriate, and staff has supported this in a separate declaration, as Steve initially mentioned, covenants and restrictions that would run with the property. The foundation type, basement or crawl space, again, separate declaration, covenants and restrictions. The buffer adjacent to Waycroft, we have included that as a zoning condition. Home sites, single-family detached homes, we've agreed to that and added it as a zoning condition. Anti-monotony, they wanted us to offer a variety of elevations, at least 10 different building elevations. Again, we've agreed to that and have offered to provide that in a separate declaration. Traffic calming devices, that roads should be engineered with as many curves and turns as possible. Well, again, that we've agreed should be on the site plan. When the construction drawings are submitted, they will show the curvilinear road design. The delineation of neighborhoods, having landscape monuments and banding in the road to identify and ease the transition between the neighborhoods. We've agreed to that, and again, would include it in the site plan application. Environmental concerns, proper documentation regarding pond studies showing it's capable of being safely drained. Again, we would include that as the erosion control component of our site plan. Site preparation, land shall not be completely denuded or mass graded. Again, we would agree to that. Not having padded out lots, again, would be shown on the site plan, the limits of that clearing and grading exercise. Minimum landscape requirements, that the front of homes should be consistent with Waycroft. Again, we've agreed to that. We think it's appropriate to be included in a covenants and restrictions type document. Assurances that development of the site will not negatively impact the vegetation in Waycroft's 25-foot buffer or riparian buffer. Agreed. We would, again, include that in the site plan with our erosion control and our limits of disturbance impact area. Open space, certain area to be shown on a map dedicated as open space, the area close to McCrimmon. There, again, agreed, and that would show up on the site plan. HOA guidelines to be provided prior to construction and not to be amended by developer. Again, those are in a covenants and restriction type document. BMP should include fountains. We would include that in the site plan, and the limitation on construction cut-through traffic would be shown on our road network as a part of the site plan. So in summary, we, again, are agreeing to everything that the Waycroft residents are asking for. It's just at what point is it appropriate to include in an approval document, whether it's a zoning condition, site plan, or separate declaration. Again, we provided that separate declaration to the Waycroft residents for their review, and that's why we've asked for the continuances. We're not trying to push this through. We'll agree to the continuance so that we can continue to work with those neighbors and make it a neighborhood that's, you know, that's acceptable for everyone.
Thank you. Next speaker for this public hearing. Anyone else to speak tonight for this public hearing? Ms. Robinson would like to continue this public hearing until the August 9th council meeting. Before we take that action, first like to hear from council if they have any comments or questions of the applicant, or may wish to address some of the points tonight, or we can do that at our next meeting during the continued public hearing. I'll open it up to council.
I'll say simply that I would encourage the applicant to continue working with the citizens. There may be some of the items that are listed under site plan that might be able to be moved over into zoning conditions, and thereby giving the residents a greater level of assurance about your intentions. So I'd encourage you to keep on working on this, and we hope by the next time we see it that there'll be a greater comfort level among the residents.
Since you have the floor, you can go ahead and make the motion. We can continue discussion.
All right, go ahead and make a motion that we leave this public hearing open and continue it at our next council meeting.
Second.
There's a motion second. Further discussion. Mr. Smith?
No, actually, I guess for the most part, we can hold the devil's in the details, and we can wait till the next one. I was actually torn listening to the comments because, in reality, I think some of the concerns or the demands for conditions seem to be extraordinarily high, and it does pose the question of what should or should not be, in the zoning conditions. At the same time, it's like the old fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We have had, and this I'm kind of echoing Ms. Jennifer's comments to the developer, I can tell you a lot of horror stories of covenants that have been changed by the developer, once the development has, there's usually a threshold at build out when it goes over to the citizens, and it's been changed. And so, be respectful of those concerns, because we've had a lot of problems out there of quality construction, and then we have warped vinyl and things of that nature. So, at first blush, it seems like some of these requests may be aggressive, but we've also learned in the past that, we trusted things getting done, and they didn't. So I just want to really echo that. I don't know what it means when you say you're going to put it aside in a separate document, but, for the citizens, I'd be looking closely at what that document is and make sure that you do have that protection.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Before we continue, I meant to do this earlier. I want to make clear exactly what the continuance of the public hearing is. We're going to allow repeats, so speakers can come back and speak again for 5 minutes and repeat of the same material or anything else.
Yes.
There'll be no limitations.
There are no limitations.
Okay. Just want to make sure that was
Thank you.
your
I appreciate
intent.
that.
Other comments? Mr. Frantz?
Just a question for clarification. This goes through the process, they work, we comes back to council, council say approves the rezoning. Would we then see the site plan?
Not necessarily.
Not if it was in compliance with the LDO and with the zoning conditions.
That's one of my concerns, is that once that rezoning is granted, that it's kind of out of council's hands at that point, and all they do have to do is meet the letter of the law. I'm both optimistic by what I see in this big document, all these conditions and stuff that they've agreed to, I'm a little disappointed that they've been meeting since February and just today get this. I'm not really sure what happened there, but I look forward to hearing what comes back after or in a couple weeks from now, and hope that we've made a lot of progress and we have a lot of happy residents and everybody else involved. So that's my comments.
Just a process question for the new person. I often see rezonings and annexations come to us at the same time, or at least in close proximity. Is there
That's when the property is not got Cary zoning on it. If a piece of property is not in our ETJ, then we have to annex it before we can apply base zoning on it. This property is already in our ETJ. It's got R40 zoning on it, so it's already under Cary's jurisdiction for planning. They're just not paying Cary taxes on it yet. I mean, it's not eligible for Cary water and sewer services and trash pickup and police protection. It's under the Wake County Sheriff's jurisdiction, but it's in Cary's planning jurisdiction.
So annexation would occur at site plan time?
They would have to submit their petition for annexation prior to or at the same time as their site plan submittal.
So at that time, if that's what you're saying, there would be a site plan for council to see?
Not to approve. If council has to look at a site plan that turns into a quasi-judicial process, staff would have to make sure that the zoning conditions, if approved, are applied on that site plan. That's part of why staff looks at and shares with the legal department what zoning conditions are presented and takes into consideration which ones staff can enforce, which is why things like building material, when we don't see building elevations on a site plan, makes enforcement a challenge. Lot size, lot width, buffer type, all of those are perfectly acceptable zoning conditions that staff can enforce.
Okay.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Okay. There's a motion on the table to continue this public hearing until August the 9th. And I would call the question at this time. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously and this public hearing is continued. Thank you, Ms. Grannon. We'll now move to Land Development Ordinance Amendments. That's their second public hearing. It's round 20B pertaining to beekeeping. We'll hear a report from our staff, and then we're going to conduct a public hearing, and then more than likely refer it to the Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation that'll come back to us at a later date. Mr. Wilson of our staff will present this item. Mr. Wilson.
Good evening. The next public hearing is a proposed land development ordinance amendment that would allow beekeeping as a hobby. The background regarding this item is as follows. During the summer and fall of 2011, we received complaints from concerned citizens regarding beekeeping activities on single-family lots in the R8 and R12 zoning districts. Upon investigating, we determined that these were instances of property owners keeping bees as a hobby rather than for any sort of agricultural production purpose. Our review of the land development ordinance revealed that beekeeping is only addressed as an agricultural use and that this use is only allowed in the R20, R40, and R80 zoning districts. So staff realized that beekeeping as a hobby is not currently addressed in the LDO. Acknowledging that bees perform an important function in the environment and recognizing that several town citizens are already keeping bees, staff decided to initiate a public process to determine if beekeeping should be allowed to occur as a hobby in Cary, and if so, how. So the staff researched model ordinances and regulations in other jurisdictions and quickly discovered that beekeeping as a hobby is currently a topic of interest in many other places around the country. We also determined that there are several key attributes that ordinances often consider when addressing this issue. Some of the more common attributes are listed here and include things such as the nature of the hives, the location and number of hives allowed, water supplies, and fencing. Our original proposal went to public hearing on February the 23rd earlier this year. The feedback that we received was that the original proposal was too restrictive, and the council directed the staff to meet with beekeeping experts. So we followed up by meeting with beekeeping experts on April the 3rd and subsequently revised our proposal. And we returned for a second public hearing this evening. The staff's original proposal was perhaps most distinguished by a 30,000 square foot minimum lot size and a fencing requirement if a hive was going to be located within 50 feet of a property line. As you can see by this comparison table, the revised proposal includes a much smaller minimum lot size, reduced setbacks, and no fencing requirement. Realizing that there may be some confusion between the 6,000 square foot minimum lot size and the density requirement of one hive per 10,000 square feet, I'd like to offer some additional clarification. The proposed density requirement allows one hive per 10,000 square feet of lot area or portion thereof. So if you live on a lot that's between 6,000 and 10,000 square feet, you could have one hive. Once you get to 10,001 square feet, you then begin the second portion thereof and can have a second hive. So if you have a 15 or an 18,000 square foot lot, you could have up to 2 hives. This continues on up to a maximum of 8 beehives. The proposal also includes revisions to several sections of the town code to address nuisances that may result from beekeeping. These revisions specify beekeeping impacts that would be classified as a nuisance and provide options to help abate and/or resolve such nuisances. The revisions also incorporate the ability to revoke a beekeeping permit if appropriate. Some other issues and concerns. Bees in swimming pools. This is an issue that came up at the first public hearing, and we researched this issue and did not come across a clear or practical solution. We did observe one jurisdiction that had a required 500-foot setback from swimming pools, but this type of requirement would be challenging to enforce, especially when someone decides to add a new pool after beekeeping permits have already been issued nearby. Another issue or concern, permits and fees. We are proposing that owners would need to obtain an accessory use permit to have beekeeping approved on their property as a hobby. There would be a one-time $50 fee with the application, like we're discussing with the backyard chicken proposal. No recurring fees are proposed. In terms of inspections and compliance, although we would review accessory use permit applications to make sure that requirements are being met, we would not physically inspect properties unless we receive a complaint. And education and certification. This was another issue that was mentioned at the first public hearing. North Carolina State University established an educational program for beekeepers where you go to take a 2-day class and pass a written and practical test to become a certified beekeeper. This program provided the opportunity whereby someone with both experience and public service efforts could then move up to higher levels of certification. A couple of years ago, though, the university's funding was cut for this program, but fortunately it was taken over and continues to be offered by the North Carolina State Beekeepers Association. We have not included beekeeping certification as a requirement in the proposed ordinance at this time, although we mentioned this item for discussion and feedback tonight. Regarding potential fiscal impacts of adopting this proposal, police and planning believe that implementation would generate modest but noticeable increased demands from both departments. If adopted, staff would propose to monitor new activities closely and identify any future staffing and/or budgetary needs based on actual demand. Tonight, we are conducting a second public hearing regarding this proposed amendment. Following the public hearing, we recommend sending this proposal to the Planning and Zoning Board for a recommendation. If you prefer this proposal to the Planning and Zoning Board this evening, then we anticipate that they will discuss this item at the upcoming work session on July 30th and then make a recommendation at the board's meeting on August 20th. If this schedule plays out, then we would anticipate that this item would most likely return to the council in September for potential action. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We will get back to you after the public hearing. At this time, I'd like to, go ahead.
Quick question. Mr. Wilson, would you mind putting back the table that you had that showed the original conditions or of the ordinance and the new conditions, just so we can compare them as people are speaking?
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure.
This time, I'll open up the public hearing and invite the first speaker to approach the podium.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm John Ambrose from NC State University, and I've been involved in this process since the original hearing and the subsequent meeting with the town staff. Again, let me just remind you that I've been a professor of entomology and have worked with honeybees for almost 40 years at NC State. During that time, I've had a number of positions both with the university and the Department of Agriculture. And the Wake County Beekeepers chapter have asked me to review this new proposal and to give my professional opinion on it. And let me start off by saying that I think this is a significant improvement over the initial proposal we had. However, I think there are some still some significant concerns that I'd like to address this evening, and they're in the handout that I've passed around to you. And before I do that, which come primarily from the summary, let me just repeat the fact that having experienced beekeepers keeping honeybees in the town of Cary has two important assets to Cary. One is it ensures the pollination of all your citizens' fruits and vegetables and flowering plants and any public plantings that you have. And secondly, the more beekeepers you have keeping bees, the less likely it is you're going to have stinging episodes. And the reason for that is the more honeybees, the more managed honeybees you have, the fewer yellow jackets, hornets, and unmanaged bees that you're going to have causing problems. So I think we can all agree that beekeeping has a place here. The question is, how do we go about it? If we look at the particular issues that were in the summary, one calls for a 10-foot setback from property lines. I think the idea of a generic 10-foot setback is not appropriate. There are some situations where it would be applicable. If your bees are facing your neighbor's property, then definitely a 10-foot setback makes sense. If it's facing public property, such as a sidewalk, a trail, or a road, then that makes sense. If the setback is facing a non-inhabited area, such as a wooded area, then it no longer is applicable because of the way that bees behave. And the second point is that if the hives are not facing towards the neighbors, then the 10-foot setback is not necessary, because when bees leave their hive, they fly away from the hive, they don't change direction and fly in the opposite direction. So the 10-foot setback does need to be looked at. There was some discussion about, and as Rob pointed out, about 6,000 or 10,000 square feet for minimum number of hives. There's two issues here. One is there's no good scientific or biological data that you need a minimum lot size. And some of you may remember I referred to the New York City ordinance when I was here before. In New York City, people don't have lots, but they do have bees. And they have bees on top of their buildings, on top of their garages. That would certainly work in the town of Cary also. As a matter of fact, if you elevate bees, they tend to fly at the height they leave the hive. They're even less of a problem. The second is that good beekeeping management practices say that you should have at least 2 hives of honeybees. And the reason for that is that if something goes wrong with one, you can transfer food, you can transfer bees, you can do all kinds of things to fix the second one without buying a replacement hive. It's just a good management practice. The restriction on, or the comment on water, definitely beekeepers have to have a water supply, and there shouldn't be any variation in that. That's essential for good, safe management practices. Item 4 calls for an accessory use permit and a fee, and I agree, admit this is outside my area of expertise, but I'm wondering if you just treat bees as a nuisance when a problem arises, do we really need the permitting system? A couple of other things I'll just mention quickly. There were comments that there were multiple concerns from property owners. I can't tell if those concerns were just, gee, somebody has bees, or there was actually a stinging episode. I haven't heard that anybody was actually stung. Whatever the situation, education is really the solution here. And as Rob mentioned, we do have programs in place. And as a matter of fact, the president of the Wake County Beekeepers Chapter has offered to hold a series of urban beekeeping seminars and workshops here in town, in Cary. And I imagine it's your center right next door. And that would be available to any citizens, whether they're beekeepers or not. There's also a couple of technical issues. In the document, it refers to honey-producing insects of the genus Apis that are kept and managed for commercial or non-commercial purposes. The honeybees that we have in this country are all Apis mellifera. They're one specific species. There are different species of honeybees, and believe me, you would not want those species of honeybees here in Cary or anywhere in the United States. As a matter of fact, it's forbidden by federal law because they present all kinds of serious problems. So there is some wording issues. And the last thing is just a small thing, and again, this is a wording issue, the use of the word bee. There's something like 2,000 different species of bees in the United States. The honeybee is one. My recommendation that I respectfully make is to follow up with the town staff has already made, is that the people who met with the town staff back in April have the opportunity to meet with the town staff again before this comes forward as a proposal, so they can have input and actually discuss these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers, please.
Good evening, Council. I'm Tom Krupa. I'm a beekeeper. I'm a certified beekeeper in Wake County. And I'd just like to reiterate that I do agree with Dr. Ambrose, and that before this gets moved forward, that the two parties come back together and review and correct any inaccuracies there are. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers for this public hearing?
Good evening, Council. My name is Leah Schreiber. I live at 100 Evans and States Drive. I've been there for 6 years. I have my house on the market because of this one situation, along with some others too. But anyway, during the 6 years that I've been there, my neighbor has attempted urban farming. I've experienced chickens, goats, and now bees. And you can hear that spurt talk all you want, and it sounds good in a perfect world, but when you live next door to it, it's not always the case. I don't think too many of you here can boast of the fact that you've lived next to that, to somebody who thinks they can do that. So anyway, I'd like you to listen to my story and just take it into consideration before you make these amendments to the LDO. This spring was the first time in my life I'd ever seen a bee swarm. And I'm well beyond the age of young, okay? Not a spring chicken, you might say. I've seen actually a total of 5. I know it's a bad spring for swarms, but I was told that this was completely, just doesn't happen. The first time, my neighbor was in the side yard in her bee garb, retrieving her bees from my tree, while assuring us that all was under control. The second time I came home for lunch and looked out in the backyard, and there was this huge swarm of bees, and it's really interesting to see. I watched it as it, congregated into one of my trees, and then I thought, well, what do I do? Animal control didn't want to do anything, so I called the beekeeper. He came out. He was really excited to get there. I think that's money in his pocket, but he took the bees. He said it was a swarm of 5,000 or 6,000, and it really was quite impressive. I told him it was the second swarm I'd seen in a matter of 2 weeks. He said I should buy a lottery ticket. That just didn't happen. And 2 days later, I spent my Saturday morning trying to track down another beekeeper, because the first beekeeper was at the flea market. I think he was selling his honey. And after that, I saw a couple additional swarms that went back into my neighbor's yard. Both of the beekeepers told me that these swarms, once they're docile and everything when they're swarming, I don't think you'd want to walk out in the middle of it, but they should be relocated because they could end up in your attic or somewhere else that you didn't want them to be. So I couldn't just leave them there. I had to deal with it. I'm not suggesting that my neighbor or anybody else shouldn't keep bees. They have the right to keep bees in their yard. I'm just not sure how they're supposed to keep them in their yard and not of mine. I don't think I should have to put up with bees of 5,000 or 6,000 at a time in my yard. And anyway, the things that bother me about the proposal, there's no requirement for training and education, even though during the last hearing, bee experts and council members alike thought that there should be some education. I suggest requiring membership in a beekeeping association that will provide training and inspection of a hive once a year. Let some responsibility fall back on the beekeeper and the beekeeping association instead of on me. The suggested setbacks maybe seem a lot, 25 feet. Moving it from 25 feet to 10 feet seems like that is going from one extreme to the other. I've read that bee swarms typically gather on a branch or in a tree close to where their hive is when they swarm. I think I experienced that with the 5 I saw. So those setbacks between 10 feet and 25 feet can make a big difference whether they land in my neighbor's yard or in my yard. And the gentleman may have answered this already, but I don't understand for recreational beekeeping why, if it's a hobby, then one hive ought to be enough. In closing, I respectfully request that you consider modifying the proposed amendment to be more protective of the majority of Cary citizens. Yes, you can allow beekeeping, and maybe it should be allowed on small pieces of property, but you don't have to. We don't have to go there to start. Should one person's desire to raise bees outweigh another person's desire to let their children play in their swimming pools? I heard complaints all this spring about their
Ms.
kids.
Schreiber, I'm sorry, your time's expired.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there another speaker for this public hearing?
Hello, my name is Brian Schreiber. I live at 100 Evans Estates. Just to continue my wife's talking about the issues, when we get those swarms, they come out there, they're very impressive. A lot of people will say 5,000 is not much. It really isn't. But if you're in the middle of it, it's impressive. It's big, it's loud, and it's a little worrisome. And if you have your grandkids over, a 5-year-old's not going to realize the bees are docile. The bees don't care. They're going to do what every 5-year-old does. Hey, there's a bee. That is when the hive will begin to get a little bit angry with you. They need to protect things. Somebody who has the training knows what they're doing. Make sure that all of their property is taken care of. Make sure that everything is done right. They're going to be fine. The people who just put a beekeeper out there and said, hey, I got a set of bees, I have an idea on where it is, they're the ones that we need to be careful of. That's why you're going to need to require things like proper water supply. Quite possibly somebody needs to inspect this. That may come down to the Beekeeper Association because at least they know what to look for. They know when somebody's doing it wrong. They also know if somebody's gone through their classes or hasn't. We need to try and keep that in mind as well. When you have 5 swarms in a 3-week period, something is incorrect, something is wrong. And somebody needs to pay attention to that and say, if we're not doing it right, if we're not taking care of this thing, we're putting some people who quite possibly could be in danger for no apparent reason. It's going to be difficult to track down. A bee came into my yard and it stung me. Well, if it's only one, not a problem. If it's a swarm, it becomes a problem. And they don't walk around with little flags or signs saying, I'm from down the street. They're a bee. So, in closing, thank you for your time. Please consider the people.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiber. Other speakers, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? Seeing no one else, I'll close this public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments. Ms. Frantz?
A couple of comments. I actually liked the idea that Mr. Ambrose from, I hope I got his last name correct, from NC State, the entomologist, regarding a meeting with staff again. But as he was talking, I almost thought that given that this is going to the P&Z for a work session, should they be there and participate actually in that work session? Would that help P&Z members, staff, and everybody? And that way P&Z is included in that process as well. I'm not sure what council's thoughts on that are.
What is planned? Are they having experts or what?
We're tentatively planning to move on to, if you refer this to the Planning and Zoning Board, that we would meet with them Monday evening for the work session, and then it would return on August 20th, assuming they move it along. It would return to their regular meeting on August 20th for a recommendation to you.
Would you think
I guess my question is, are there going to be beekeeping experts there, or is it just staff and P&Z members?
At this time, we were just planning staff and P&Z members.
That's what you were getting at, asking that there be an expert present. I know that's not a lot of time if you're meeting on Monday, but.
We can certainly work to see if we can arrange that, and if not, we can look to delay and go to a subsequent work session.
I would just think, I think it's a good idea to do it. I think it helps better educate both the P&Z members and obviously the information that we get back from them as a board. I mean, if some folks can make Monday's meeting, great. If not, then Is this the only thing on P and Z's calendar?
No,
for
they
Monday?
have other items.
Okay, all right.
So,
Okay. I heard some of the arguments on the setbacks. I would like to learn more there. I struggle just like I did with chickens regarding the $50 fee for the permit. Would existing beekeepers that say have been keeping for years now have to pay that one-time fee? Are they grandfathered in? How's that work?
folks that are in an R20, R40, or R80
Right, they
zoning
can
district,
already-
yeah, who are doing it now related to some sort of agricultural use, they would be fine. They would not need to come in. But anyone who's doing it as a hobby and anyone who wants to do it on a smaller lot, less than 20,000 square feet, they would need to come in for the accessory use permit.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm going to win that argument again, or didn't win it the last time, so I've got a concern there with that. Those are all my questions and concerns this time. It's a lot of ordinance for bees. Kind of would like it condensed, but that's just me. I'd really like to hear what P&Z and some of the experts have to say and get this information back. That's up in my comments for right now.
Ms. Adcock?
I agree with Mr. Frantz, and I think it just makes sense to have the experts at the work session, because so much of what Dr. Ambrose talked to us about was, where's the evidence to say, you know, that this set 25 feet versus 10 makes any difference, and other issues. And I think that, as we always try to do, we try to craft an ordinance that's based on known facts. And I think rather than get this out of sync with the planned meetings and work sessions with P&Z, if we incorporate it that way, they'll hear the evidence, they can make changes, and then send it back to us based on. And I actually think that there should be some discussion with them about the education piece. I mean, I do think that, like any the hobby, people go into it thinking, you know, this isn't that difficult, and you know, they could perhaps be harmful to themselves or others. No one wants to do that. And so an educational piece in there that's either mandatory or not should be considered. I mean, I think this is such a new thing. And I think that, you know, Ms. Schreiber makes a good point that we're trying to make an ordinance here that is good for the majority of people. And the majority of people aren't going to keep bees, but they may be around bees. So there seems to be some real wisdom to that.
I think it'd be helpful if Mr. Ambrose could, if he was willing to do this, just to look into the concerns that the Schreibers had and see what could be done differently under our ordinance to ensure that those kind of problems don't occur. I mean, if they're saying, well, setback would help, you know, if he could give his opinion on that, maybe there's something that we can highlight from that property that's going wrong that we need to consider in our ordinance. I don't know, but it's very disheartening to hear that citizens feel like it's a burden to them because their neighbors have bees. And that's not the intent, is to burden other people, to allow people to enjoy their hobby. I think having bees is great, and I want to see this ordinance go through, but I also want to make sure that we don't have a new problem rising.
I agree. Anyone else?
Yeah, well, first of all, on the fees, I have similar concerns the other way. I find them ridiculously low. I think fees serve a purpose of demonstrating the sincerity of the intent for people that want to get into the fad of the week or the hobby of the week or whatever. People need to really think twice about getting into an investment like this. And I think one of the things that helps you think about, should I get involved with the complexity of all this, is having a reasonable fee. So making it easy, I don't think is what I want to see. I want to see a hurdle a little bit higher. Regarding the setback, regarding the square footage, in my houses would allow 4 hives, and I can't comprehend fitting 4 hives on my lot. And there I find it incredulous that we're looking at 6,000 square feet. We're not New York. We're trying to strike a balance between our homeowners and the quality of life here and people that want to have a granted worthwhile hobby, but there are concerns with that hobby. So I do echo and support the whole idea of active involvement with a professional association. I think it's great that the Beekeeper Association is working and continuing to work with us, because that's going to be, in my mind, the critical piece. But I really don't buy a lot of these arguments that I see from the experts. I mean, experts used to say if a craft is heavier than air, it won't fly. You've got to put balance to the experts, and you have to overlay that to our citizens and our quality of life. So in a sense, Jennifer, I agree with you. We've got to find a way to have that balance. And to read in here that 10-foot setbacks if you're in front of a sidewalk or a bike path, God forbid a bicycle goes off the bike path and hits that hive. I'd like to see that we keep setbacks comparable to other things that we do in development with setbacks, and I'd like to see them in the back, and I sure don't want them less for just what those citizens have said. And I'm really incredulous at the whole size of the reduced lot sizes and the setback. But again, I think the idea of the work session is good. I think it's good to have those professionals there. But I'm counting on citizens being there, and our P&Z, which is a group of citizens, to keep everybody in mind and strike a common sense balance. I think I'm actually not against the beekeeping. I think it's a great hobby for those that are committed to it, but we have to strike the balance. We can't have everything so easy that we have no setbacks, no standards, and we have a disproportionate amount of hives for very small lots. I think that's a dangerous slope to go down. So, obviously we're not all together on this, and I do hope that if in that work session those groups do come together, and that maybe out of the work session and some of the recommendations we get back, we'll have something that's just a little bit cleaner. That's my hope, at least. Yeah.
Is that correct?
I did want to add something else. I think Ms. Robinson makes a good suggestion that since we've been presented with this like case study, that's a great way to see what could be done to avoid the kind of situation that Ms. Shriver describes. The other thing I meant to point out is I've had some emails from some citizens who maybe remember this when Dr. Ambrose was talking. I do think the other part of this proposal at this point that needs input from the experts as well as from citizens, and based on kind of evidence and facts, is the whole nuisance and enforcement piece. Because one of the situations that was described to me is, okay, so you have a nuisance bee or swarm of bees, but there are 3 beekeepers in the neighborhood. How do you figure out whose hives you need to relocate and those kinds of things? I mean, I don't think it's usually as straightforward and simple as, oh, there's one hive, there's the bees. So I think that needs some massaging as well as part of this work session.
Yeah, just 2 comments. One, I think the education is really key, and we talked about that quite a bit when chickens came up to the council, and I think we might as well stay on the education bandwagon and give people the kind of information they need to be safe and to keep, do what they can to keep the bees as much as they can from being a nuisance. One thing I did not see, and maybe I missed it, there are some community gardens around the area, some of them not even 6,000 square feet, and then we have new community gardens that might be planned for Carpenter Park. How will those particular lots be addressed within this ordinance?
They are not addressed as part of this proposed amendment. This just addresses...
So does that mean you
correct.
Can't have bees on it in like the Cary Pocket Garden?
As this is currently proposed, no.
I would suggest we look at that. I mean, I know that if they offer so much value, as Dr. Ambrose said, to our community gardens and our flowers and our plants, then it seems to me we want to have bees near them. So I'd invite maybe someone from our gardens to participate.
We can look into that. I think one of the thought had crossed our minds, who would be responsible and how you would link that. The accessory use permit process allows us to identify where beekeepers are, and that has value, especially if there were a nuisance type of incident. We can quickly digitally figure out, well, where are the beekeepers that we know about in close proximity. A situation like that, where instead of tying it to an owner on a single family lot, who is it tied to? But we'll take a look at that.
And without giving away too much information, there happen to be some gardens around that already have bees. So I would hate for anyone to not be included in this proposal. Be included, you got it.
Well, I strongly disagree with that, and I think we're all muddying the water when we start looking at that. We're going to start putting beehives on community areas where there's nobody held accountable, and you have the risk of, you just open the door for risk. And maybe they're out there already, but I sure wouldn't want to encourage it in this. I'd rather get through this and start with baby steps and have meaningful approaches to how we're going to do this in the future before I start looking at community activities where you have the general public intermingling with those hives and just the risk of problems surfacing there. So, I mean, you can look at it all you want, but that would be a real concern of mine.
Mr. Frantz?
Regarding the concerns about education, I do agree. I've visited hives. I've got a neighbor that's into beekeeping, and everybody I've met that has kept bees is very involved in Wake County Beekeepers Association, takes the time to get the information, because I can't think there's anybody out there that's going to buy thousands of bees and just open a box without knowing what to do with them. I just don't see it happening. It's not like a hot rod hobby or a bicycling hobby or something like that. I don't know, I wouldn't do it, but, and I also agree with Ms. Bush's comments regarding the community garden. I think we do need to have something in this ordinance for that.
Oh, this is getting to be fun. Well, I actually, Don, I agree with you that I hope that people that get into this are as serious as you say, but there is something called the human condition. And I guarantee you that, unfortunately, with government, we have to kind of look for that common denominator. And I just, you know, in theory, I love the idea of simpler documents and ordinances and codes. I think that's great. It's easier to understand than that. But this is new ground, and I absolutely hope that you're right, that the people that get involved, the new people that get involved, people that are into this already, you know, they love it. There's a passion for it. They respect what the bees do and what they give back, you know, and all that. But, you know, maybe I'm the one that lives next to, like, the person that came up, you know. I think we always have to find a way to strike the balance. And the only concern I have about the community garden is I just don't want to debate it tonight. You know, if we want to look at it, fine. I just don't want it muddying the water of something we're trying to work through right now. It's a timing issue for me more than anything.
Okay, other concerns or questions? Okay, we're going to forward this to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. And we appreciate Mr. Wilson's input on this.
He always gets the fun ones.
Thank you.
Our third public hearing pertains to amending the board's commission's provisions in the town code. We're going to hear a report from staff, conduct a public hearing. Then we're going to refer the item to the Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation. And our town clerk, Ms. Rowland, will present this item. Ms. Rowland.
Good evening, Council. At the 2012 Council Staff Retreat, you authorized staff to take the necessary steps to eliminate the Town Center Review Commission. To date, the Council has amended the Land Development Ordinance to remove that Commission's duties from that document. Tonight's public hearing is focused on cleaning up the town code to remove the references to the Town Center Review Commission from that document as well, in addition to several minor housekeeping amendments. The ordinance amendment proposes deleting Section 2-174 in its entirety. This is the existing section of the town code pertaining to the Town Center Review Commission. The ordinance amendment also proposes amending Section 2-171. That's the section pertaining to the P&Z Board, and there's a reference in that section that calls for a Planning and Zoning Board member to be a chair of the Town Center Review Commission, so we just propose amending that particular text. These two changes will remove all references to the Town Center Review Commission from the town code. The housekeeping changes include changing the title of Section 2-162. The title currently reads, Definitions and Requirements for a Public Hearing. We instead propose that title simply read General Provisions. We also propose deleting Section 2:162, subsection C. That section requires us to conduct a public hearing to amend any parts of the boards and commissions text in the town code. State law only requires us to conduct public hearings that amend code references pertaining to our Planning and Zoning Board and the Zoning Board of Adjustment, since those two boards are created by statutory authority. If council approves deleting this subsection, we would of course continue conducting public hearings anytime we wanted to amend anything pertaining to the Planning and Zoning Board and Zoning Board of Adjustment, but not other boards that are referenced in the town code. And that would make us consistent with how we handle other amendments to the town code, because we do not conduct public hearings to amend other sections of our code. And then finally, amending Section 2:172, subsection C. That currently specifies that the Zoning Board of Adjustment decisions for variances and appeals are recorded with the Register of Deeds. The proposed amendment is to change it to read, as appropriate, Zoning Board of Adjustment decisions are recorded with the Register of Deeds. It just makes it broadly their decisions, not just specifying two particular decisions. Staff recommends that council conduct the public hearing this evening, and following the public hearing, refer it to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you to open the public hearing, and I'm available after the hearing if there are any questions.
Thank you. This time I'll open up the public hearing for anyone who would like to speak about the amending board and commission provisions, and I'll invite them to the podium at this time. Is there anyone to speak on this issue? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions or comments. Seeing none, we'll refer this to the Planning and Zoning Board and await their recommendation. Thank you, Ms. Rowland.
Thank you.
We now move to the fourth public hearing. It's an annexation, 12A08 Christ Family Church. We're going to hear a report from our staff and conduct the public hearing, and then council will take or may take action. And Ms. Grannon of our staff will present this item. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you. This is a request for annexation for approximately 4.96 acres located at 804 Reedy Creek Road. The property is approximately 503 feet northeast of the intersection of Northeast Maynard Road. And the request also includes 0.22 acres of adjacent public right-of-way. The property is in Cary's ETJ and is zoned residential 40. It is currently developed with a single-family dwelling. The request is not associated with a proposed site plan or a rezoning application. The applicant is simply requesting to connect to Cary Utilities, to Cary Water. Following the public hearing, council may take final action on this request.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing for anyone who would like to speak on this annexation. Anyone at all? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions, comments, or a motion.
I have a motion,
Yes, ma'am.
unless there's a question. I move approval of annexation petition 12A08.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Grannon. We now move to our fifth public hearing, our final public hearing. It's a special use, 12 SU 002, St. Paul's Episcopal Church. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. An overview of the hearing procedures and detailed rules are attached to the printed agenda. All speakers who wish to speak during this public hearing must be administered an oath by the town clerk. We're going to pause just for a moment to allow those individuals who would like to speak at this public hearing to approach the town clerk to my right and receive their oaths.
This will be a new experience for Sue to have a priest put his hand on the Bible and swear. I think I saw a priest here earlier. Yep.
So you'll speak.
She. Right there. There's a male priest
get that done at 8:30, so.
Now I'd like to ask council members to disclose any ex parte communication, and I'll start on my right with Mayor Pro Tem Adcock.
I have none to report.
I have none to report.
I've done the report.
And I have none to report.
I don't have anything to report.
And Ms. Bush is coming out just in time to talk about if she has any ex parte communications to disclose.
No, sir.
None at all. Based on the disclosures we've heard from the council members, I'll invite anyone to the podium who has been sworn to speak if you have any objection to a council member's participation in this hearing. Okay, seeing no one, Mr. Hales of our planning staff will introduce this item. Mr. Hales.
Good evening, Council. As you mentioned, the next item on tonight's agenda is a request by St. Paul's Episcopal Church to utilize an existing residential structure on approximately 2.5 acres in downtown Cary to expand their existing community outreach and office space that exists in the current church. The property is in the town center. It's a landlocked parcel, approximately 2.5 acres in size, located at, it actually has no road frontage on Kent Drive, but it's at the end of Kent Drive, immediately north of the existing St. Paul's Episcopal Church. The property, as I mentioned, has no road frontage. It is not in the vicinity of any major roadways or transit routes. There is a proposed future greenway that runs across the southern and western boundaries of the church property, but not on the subject parcel itself. Because of the insignificant nature of the changes to the site, they were not required to do any dedication of right-of-way greenway easements or anything like that associated with this project. There's a stream buffer that runs along the northern property line of the subject property. And because the property is in town center and zoned town center, the land use designation identifies the zoning sub-district into which the property falls, and that is low-density residential in this case. Surrounded by two churches. Immediately to the south is St. Paul's Episcopal. There's another church slightly to the southeast of that. Both are institutional, low-density residential to the north and immediately to the east, and then the Chatham Commons rest home or nursing home adjacent to the west along West Chatham Street. Existing conditions, it's currently served by a private access drive, which I've highlighted here. It comes in off of the end of Kent Street, crosses another property, and then comes to the front of the house. There's an existing approximately 2,200 square foot residence on the property. It's very heavily wooded with hardwoods, and topography drops off toward the stream to the north. Basically, the only change that's being proposed in regards to the change in use to the property itself and its associated minor alteration, which staff is approving administratively once the use is approved, is the addition of a new sidewalk to connect the site to the existing church. The idea is that the access from Kent Drive would go away. Because the property has no road frontage currently, they're required to recombine it to provide road access to the property to use it for anything other than residential, which it is now. So to do that, they're going to recombine it with the church property, use the church parking lot, and access it basically from the back of the structure using this sidewalk. I went backwards. It's just a photo of the rear of the structure coming from the parking lot, which you just saw, with the entrance sunroom. Basically, it's a brick and wood siding, residential pitched roof. The front from the Kent Street access showing the carport. There's an existing vehicular gate on that access drive, and the church has indicated they don't plan on using that. As you're aware in the staff report, there are use-specific standards for religious assembly uses. I'll run through those really briefly. One is that they attain a special use, which is why we're having this public hearing tonight. New religious assembly uses shall fall on a collector or thoroughfare. This is existing, so that's not applicable. Development shall not request minor modifications to the development standards. They're meeting all the required setbacks and buffering, so that's not an issue. This is an expansion of existing religious assembly, and they are applying for the special use. And this is not proposed to increase their existing religious meeting space, the sanctuary space. This is for office and community outreach programs. You're familiar with the 7 approval criteria for special uses. They generally comply with the comprehensive plan. They not endanger the public health. They're reasonably necessary for the functioning of the community. They not harm adjacent property values. They be in harmony with the surrounding area. They be served by public services. and they not cause undue traffic problems. Each of these has been addressed individually in your worksheet in the staff report. That concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is here to present their case, and staff and the applicant will be available following the public hearings if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open the quasi-judicial public hearing at this time, and we'll call on the applicant's attorney to present arguments and evidence in support of the application by addressing the applicable approval criteria.
Good evening, Town Council. My name is Frank Bricio. I am a resident of the town of Cary, as well as being a member of the Wake County Bar. My address is 103 Chancellor's Ridge Court in Cary, North Carolina. I'm appearing on behalf of St. Paul's Episcopal Church. That is the applicant in this case. St. Paul's Episcopal Church, the address is 221 Union Street. Again, Cary, North Carolina, zip code's 27511. If I could, just without doing any kind of opening statement, just go ahead and call my first witness, if I may. I'd like to go ahead and call Mary Kentz as my first witness, please. Ms. Kentz, if you could, for the record, please state your complete name.
It's Mary Margaret Kintz,
Okay. Could you please state your address?
3610 Choplinshire Way, Apex, 27539.
And are you familiar with St. Paul's Episcopal Church located at 221 Union Street in Cary, North Carolina?
Yes.
And are you a member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church?
Yes.
And do you perform any volunteer activities at St. Paul's Episcopal Church?
Yes.
Did you volunteer to complete a special use application for St. Paul's Episcopal Church?
Yes.
Did St. Paul's Episcopal Church authorize you to complete a special use application for the property located at 511 Kent Drive, Cary, North Carolina, 27511?
Yes.
And did you in fact complete a special use application for the property located at 511 Kent Drive?
Yes.
Is the special use application you completed what has been marked as Exhibit A?
Yes.
Did you submit the special use application that has been marked as Exhibit A to the town of Cary?
Yes, I did.
Were any attachments a part of the special use application that you submitted to the town of Cary?
Yes.
Did the attachments to the special use application include what have been marked as Exhibits B, D as in dog, and E as in Edgar?
Yes.
At this time, the applicant moves to have Exhibits A, B, D, and E admitted into the record.
Yes, thank you.
I don't have any further questions for this witness.
Okay.
If I may call Sally Harbald as our next witness. If you could, please state your complete name for the record.
Sally Lou Harbold.
Okay. And could you please state your address?
Yes, forgive me, I live at 4615 Willoway in Durham.
Are you familiar with St. Paul's Episcopal Church located at 221 Union Street in Cary, North
I
Carolina?
am.
Okay. How are you familiar with St. Paul's?
I've been employed there for 12 years and 8 months.
Okay. Are individual counseling services provided at the property located at 221 Union Street?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Are such counseling services offered to members of St. Paul's?
Yes.
Are such counseling services offered to members of the Cary community who
Yes.
are not members of St. Paul's?
Yes, all are welcome.
Will such counseling services be offered at the property located at 511 Kent Drive?
I certainly hope so.
Okay. Are small group meetings held at the property located at 221 Union Street?
Yes.
Okay. And what are some examples of these small group meetings?
Well, we have support groups, parenting classes, college prep classes, tutoring.
And are such group meetings offered to members of St. Paul's?
Yes.
Are such group meetings offered to members of the Cary community who are not members of St. Paul's?
Yes, they are.
Will such small group meetings be held at the property located at 511 Kent Drive?
Yes, I hope so.
Are administrative services to support the individual counseling and small group meetings performed at the property located at 221 Union Street in Cary, North Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. Will such administrative services to support the individual counseling and small group meetings performed at the property located at 511 Kent Drive in Cary, North Carolina?
Yes, a necessary addition.
Does the church intend to have worship services on the property located at 511 Kent Drive?
No,
Are you familiar with the property located at 511 Kent Drive?
I am.
How many buildings are located on the property located at 511 Kent Drive?
Just one, just a house.
And does the building located at 511 Kent Drive look like a residential building?
It does. It's an unusual configuration, but it's a house, yes.
Does St. Paul's intend to make any alterations to the exterior appearance of the building located?
We
at-
do not.
Will St. Paul's change the scale, bulk, coverage, or density of the existing site located at 511 Kent Drive?
No, we will not.
Have you reviewed the special use application which has been marked as Exhibit A?
Yes, I have.
And to the best of your knowledge, is the information provided in the special use application which has been marked as Exhibit A correct?
It is.
And how long have you been familiar with the property at St. Paul's Episcopal Church?
Well, the 12 years and 8 months that
Okay.
I've worked there.
And during those 12 years and 8 months, have there been any incidents of material danger to the public health or safety caused by the services offered at 211 Union Street?
No, there have not.
At this time, I don't have any further questions for this witness.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Mr. John Woodmore. Mr. Woodmore, if you could state your complete name for the record.
John Lee Woodmore,
And could you please state your address?
110 Schaefer Close, Cary, North Carolina,
And where do you work?
for Stokes Appraisal.
And is that the complete name of the company that you work, Stokes Appraisal Service?
Yes.
And have you received any specialized education, what is your position at Stokes Appraisal Service?
I'm a real estate appraiser.
Okay. And have you received any specialized education to become an appraiser?
Yes, I'm state certified and also have a national designation.
Okay. So you do have professional licenses as an appraiser?
Yes.
Do you have any experience valuing real estate in Cary, North Carolina?
Yes.
And how long have you been appraising real estate in Cary, North Carolina?
Approximately 20 years.
Are you familiar with the property located at 511 Kent Drive, Cary, North Carolina?
Yes, I am.
And how did you become familiar with the property located at 511 Kent Drive?
Well, I was asked to take a look at it, and I went to the property, and I walked around the property and observed the neighborhood and the site location, and et cetera.
Okay, and when is it that you did become familiar with the property at 511 Kent Drive?
Approximately 2 weeks ago.
Are you familiar with the area and neighborhood where the 511 Kent Drive property is located?
Yes, I am.
And how did you become familiar with the area and neighborhood where 511 Kent Drive is located?
I've been appraising properties in that area for 20 years.
Okay. So it's been over the last 20 years that you became familiar, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you reviewed the special use application which has been marked as Exhibit A?
Yes, I have.
And have you reviewed the exhibits which have been marked as Exhibits B, D as in dog, and E as in Edgar?
Yes, I have.
Did you hear the testimony of Dr. Sally Harbold tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Assuming the town council finds the testimony of Dr. Harbold to be true, do you have an opinion whether the proposed special use will substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property?
Yes, I have an opinion.
And what's that opinion?
That I don't believe it will.
Assuming that the town finds the testimony of Dr. Harbold to be true, do you have an opinion whether the proposed use will be in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the area or neighborhood? Would you like me to re-ask the question?
I read the question before.
Do you have an opinion whether, assuming the town council finds the testimony of Dr. Harbold to be true, whether the proposed use will be in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the area.
Yes, I believe it'll be in harmony.
At this time, I don't have any further questions for this witness.
Thank you.
I believe that Mr. Hales mentioned that there was a staff report, and what we would like at this time is to move to have that staff report become a part of the record.
Okay. Any comments, Mr. Hales? Any additions?
None, no.
Okay. That is acceptable.
Okay. And at this point, the applicant doesn't have any other witnesses to call.
Okay. So the applicant has presented their arguments, their witnesses, their evidence in support of the application by addressing the applicable approval criteria. I would invite other speakers at this time that have been sworn in to speak in support of the application to approach the podium at this time. Is there anyone else? Okay. Then we'll move on. I'll, at this time, invite anyone who is opposed to this request that may cross-examine the applicant's attorney and any of the witnesses who testified in support of the request. Anyone opposed? Seeing no one? Well, oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me, I didn't see.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Joy Wayman, and I live at 414 Kent Drive, and I've lived there for 15 years, which is located within 200 feet of the church property. I'm a North Carolina licensed real estate broker, and I work for the State Property Office. I'm in the uncomfortable position of speaking against the proposed special use permit by a church. I do understand that this is a church and a church-owned property, but I question if the intended use is strictly for church activities and religious assembly. In my opinion, the special use permit application does not adequately disclose the uses. I have provided the clerk a handout of factual information for your review. For your information, I've included documents by St. Paul's Episcopal Church from the Secretary of State's Corporation Division creating the legal entity of St. Paul's Center for Hope and Healing and the reserved name of St. Paul's Center for Hope and Learning. I am concerned about the safety and security of the neighborhood. For your consideration, I've included the Spring-Summer 2012 brochure from St. Paul's Center for Hope and Healing. Some of the services listed in the brochure appear to be beyond the scope of services typically offered by a church, including addiction counseling and dialectical behavior therapy, which is used to treat borderline personality disorder. The brochure lists a staff of 9, including 5 licensed professional counselors, along with an additional listing of 6 instructors for a current total professional staff of 15, which in my opinion could compete with private sector counseling firms. In the brochure under counseling services cost, please note that the services provided are fee-based and includes the acceptance of insurance and Medicaid. In my opinion, these professional services should be located in an appropriately zoned medical office facility. My fear is that the facility will continue to expand services and be utilized as a mental health counseling center. For your information, I've included a list of 504 professional counselors covered by my insurance company located within 10 miles of the church, indicating the counseling services are not reasonably necessary to fill a void of service or provide a service essential to the community. As a licensed North Carolina real estate broker, a real property agent 3 with the state, and I include 40-plus years of real estate experience, it is my professional opinion that the proposed use will substantially injure the value of the adjoining or abutting property. I feel that the use is not consistent and should not be in a very low-density residential zoning district. I ask the council to limit the use to those uses allowed in a residential zoning district. The use of the property is not in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. I hope the council would deny the special use permit. However, if the council moves forward and grants a special use permit, I ask that the council place conditions on the special use permit. I respectfully request council to place a condition on the applicant to relinquish the access easement interest by deed to the fee holders of the adjoining property to assure Kent Drive will not be utilized to access the facilities now or in the future. As indicated by the applicant in their statement of justification, item number 1, it states that the existing driveway connection to the neighborhood on Kent Drive will no longer be used. In an informational community meeting when St. Paul's was intending to seek rezoning of the property for office and institutional, St. Paul stated there would be no drug counseling held on the property. I respectfully request conditions be placed on the property prohibiting drug counseling, court-ordered counseling, counseling as a condition of release from a mental health facility or prison, violence counseling, use as a halfway house, drug treatment center, domestic violence shelter, or homeless shelter, or any overnight stays to protect the safety and security of the community. Also, there were no formal information sessions held with property owners within the 200 feet included in the notification. Thank you. And I'm sorry I spoke against the church.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in opposition to this request that would like to speak? If not, we'll move to invite the attorney representing the applicant to cross-examine and ask questions of the witness who spoke in opposition.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to go ahead and cross-examine the witness.
Wayman, if you could come back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you spell your name for me, please?
Joy, J-O-Y, middle initial M, last name Wayman, W-A-Y-M-A-N.
Thank you, Ms. Wayman. Do you have any licenses with regard to appraising real estate?
No, I do not. But I review appraisals on a daily basis.
Have you offered any kind of appraisals of property to individuals in the Cary community?
Have I offered appraisals? No, I've ordered appraisals.
But have you performed any appraisals at all?
I'm not a licensed appraiser, no.
You indicated that you believe that addiction counseling would be offered on the property at 511 Kent Drive. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. It's in their brochure.
Could you just point out where specifically in the brochure it's referenced?
Yes, just 1 second. I'm sorry, which one?
I'm asking you. You're the one.
For addiction counseling?
That's correct.
On page number 12, under healing addictions.
Okay. Is that not, does that not, or if you could read into the record expressly what it says about addiction services?
Should I read it into the record?
Well, if I may, go ahead and read in what it specifically says. It says that, it's page 12, addictions. It says Lydia Klaus, LPC, LCAS, will discuss the myths and facts about addiction, helping participants to gain a clear understanding of the progression of behavior. Information about warning signs for various types of addictions will be provided, as well as information about identifying high-risk populations and the various resources available for treatment. Do you read that to believe that, does it say anything in there about addiction treatment there?
It does not.
Okay, then isn't it really just informing the public about addictions?
No, I cannot speak to that. I do not know what the expanded services will cover.
Well, does it say anything on there about expanded services related to addictions?
Are they going to do addiction counseling at the residential property?
What, does it, anywhere in there, do you see reference that they're going to be doing addiction treatment?
Yes, the title of the thing is addictions,
Well,
and it's healing.
what does it say? Anywhere in the paragraph below it, does it say they're going to offer treatment to addictions?
No.
Okay. And does your property abut the property that is located at 511 Kent
I
Drive?
abut the easement driveway that goes to the property.
Okay. But isn't that easement on somebody else's property?
Yes, it is, my adjoining neighbor,
Okay, and what's that neighbor's name?
Frank Lazaro, and Gale and Otis Cowper.
Okay, and neither one of them is here in opposition, is that correct?
To my knowledge, no one has spoken.
Do you know how many vehicles have traveled up that driveway in the last 6 months?
I see several when I'm home, but I'm not home during the day. I work.
Well, in the last 6 months, how many vehicles have you seen going
I have
up that
not
driveway? Is it more than 10 or less than 10
More than 10.
in the last 6 months?
Yes.
Is it more than 20?
I don't know. I did not count.
You heard Dr. Harbold say that in the last 12 years, there have not been any incidents of danger to the public welfare or public health or public safety. Do you have any reason to dispute that?
No, I also do not want there to be.
Has any expert told you that there's going to be a threat to the community because of the services provided there?
No.
May I have a second, please?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions.
Okay. We're now the portion, and I'm going to look to my town attorney in case I'm wrong, asking anyone if they have, anyone sworn in, if they have any objections to the incompetent evidence or testimony.
That's fine, Mayor, and I believe some of the evidence was offered tonight if they feel prejudiced for having it be delivered at the hearing rather than earlier, might be appropriate too.
And before I close the public comment portion of the hearing, I would ask either party if they believe there is additional new evidence that warrants a continuance of this hearing.
Your Honor, may I offer a rebuttal witness?
Sure.
Yes, that's...
Okay. I'd like to call Dr. Harbaugh, please. Dr. Harbaugh, has there been any addiction treatment offered at St. Paul's in the last 2 years?
No, there is not, no.
And this,
Other places do that, so.
and as far as the brochure that has been referenced tonight, the page 12 that was referenced, was in fact any addiction treatment offered in connection with the program referenced on page 12?
No, it was a public forum, an open invitation for people to learn about, as it says, the myths and facts about addiction in a broad range, but no treatment.
And you are familiar with the property at 511 Kent Drive, correct?
I am.
Okay. I'm going to show to you what has previously been marked as Exhibit D.
Okay.
On Exhibit D, are there any kind of gates at the end of the driveway to prevent people from coming up the driveway?
Yes. Yes, we installed a gate.
Okay. And when was that gate installed?
I'm going to say, this is July. It was in the spring sometime, maybe March or April, something like that. I'd have to look it up.
Well, since the time, let me ask you a question that I asked Ms. Wayman. In the last 6 months, about how many vehicles have used that driveway?
To my knowledge, 0 in the last 6 months. We had some deliveries of furniture that was donated to us and took a truck up there last fall, almost a year ago, and we installed the gate. It doesn't have a padlock on it, but we agreed with Frank and Beryl that if we were letting anyone in the gate, that we would call them ahead of time, and so that they would know, like if we had a repairman that had to come up or something. So to my knowledge, no cars.
And in the last 6 months, then, where have people accessed the property?
We're coming from the parking lot at St. Paul's. Even the repairman who came and worked on the roof leak and different things like that, they used the St. Paul's parking lot and back entrance.
I don't have any further questions. Before we continue, I don't know if this is the appropriate time or not, but would like to go ahead and move to strike any opinion testimony given by Ms. Wayman, in particular with regard to any kind of adverse effects on real estate values, because she's not qualified as an appraiser. And secondly, as far as any kind of opinions regarding the risks to the welfare of the community, I don't think that there's any basis for that.
I'll ask the town attorney for advice.
Mayor, it's up to you to decide. You can let it go to the weight that you give her testimony, or you can agree and just have her testimony struck. I would recommend that perhaps you just let it go to the weight that you give it, that you don't give it as much weight as you do the licensed real estate appraiser.
Okay, very good. That's what we'll do.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Before I close the comment period, I want to make sure that if either party believes that additional new evidence warrants a continuance of this public hearing, that they let us know. Ms. Wayman, I see you standing.
Yes, sir, I would like a...
Please come forward. So.
Yes, sir, I respectfully request a continuance so that we may hire our own appraiser to present evidence if I am declared not an expert in real estate matters, that we will hire one as well. We will also bring in expert testimony as to the therapies. When we met with St. Paul's Church initially for their rezoning, and we have the letters and the brochures, They told us in the meeting they were going to do addiction therapy. And I would like to bring in our neighbors that were also attending that meeting to present testimony to you on that behalf,
Okay,
as well as other facts.
okay. Thank you.
May I just object to the hearsay, because she did say that the statement was... I would just like to formally lodge an objection to the hearsay testimony that she just provided about what was said at the any kind of meetings that occurred prior to this application.
Okay.
We'll be happy to bring up Ms. Harbaugh and ask her. She conducted the meeting.
Ms. Simpson, I would ask your advice to the council before we decide or not to continue this public hearing, if you have any advice for us that you would like to share.
Not at this point, but if you'll allow me to interrupt later as I...
Okay, so we're at the point, the way I understand it, where council needs to decide whether we continue this public hearing or not.
That's right.
And I would entertain a motion to do that.
Before that, I'd like to ask a question. We've heard from Ms. Wayman a list of types of counseling or therapy that she would be concerned about. And I'm wondering if the applicant is allowed to offer as a condition that they will not conduct those types of counseling or therapy at that house site. That may allay their concerns. If they have the church building, they could still use for complimentary services, but not use that house for it. And I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
It is possible, and I think...
Is it also possible to ensure that there would be nobody living in this home?
Our intention is not to have any overnight stays.
Intent is not a yes or no.
Well,
As a condition.
Well, as a condition, my understanding is that the church would gladly accept that as a condition. And I don't have written down all the conditions that were listed by Ms. Wayman, but my understanding also was that the conditions that she listed were acceptable to the church. But let me double check with Dr. Harbold, if I may, on that.
Okay, Ms. Adcock first.
Well, before the church agrees to not do these kinds of counseling, I'd like to see the list, because Ms. Wayman read them off rather quickly. And the other thing, I think, since this is quasi-judicial, so we should have some proof that that kind of counseling would truly be a detriment to the community. I mean, in what way would it be? I mean, that was a very quick list. I remember some of it, court-ordered counseling prior to release from domestic violence charges and things like that. And so, I just think rather than just agree to a list, in what way, I mean, there doesn't have to be some proof that would be harmful to the surrounding community as part of that. I'm just asking for some evidence.
I think, just my personal belief is I think some of these might be very hard to prove, whether it's a detriment. Sometimes just a neighbor's perception is a concern enough. If someone says, well, I'm concerned about this, I believe my property is not as safe or secure if I have these uses here, might be worth
I understand that, but since it's quasi-judicial, don't the 7 conditions have to be proven? And one is that it's not harmful to the surrounding community, so don't you likewise have to prove harm to show no harm?
Well, the burden's on the applicant to meet the criteria, but if the applicant's willing, if they understand the list and are willing to agree not to provide those services, I think that would be fine.
So it would only be the ones for which they disagree that they would need to provide proof. Okay.
That's right.
And if I could, I would be glad to have Dr. Harbaugh say which items the applicant would agree to, since she's a lot more familiar with the services offered. And if we want to have Ms. Whalen list them.
Hold on just a second. The council is asking whether we can give them a break so that they can organize. I'm not sure if we can do that, or can we do that?
Would that be acceptable to you?
Yeah,
Would that
I'd be
helpful?
glad to recess for 2 or 3 minutes to just get the list.
And in our recess, we're not allowed to deliberate or discuss this at all.
That's
just
right.
make that very clear. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
All right, thank you.
We'll reconvene this council meeting, and I would invite the attorney of the applicant back to talk about the conditions that they have worked out or working out.
Yes, if I could, I did speak with the representatives from St. Paul's, and the position of the church is that drug counseling is not offered. That's a condition that we can agree to because the church just simply does not want to get in the business of drug counseling for treating addictions or anything like that. As far as court-ordered counseling, that's just overly broad from our perspective. Currently, if the church helps provide counseling for individuals that have been ordered for court-ordered counseling, respecting, for example, custody issues, and that, like I said, that would be overly broad just to agree not to offer that type of service. So we can't agree to that, cannot agree to that as a condition. And we just feel it's inappropriate because that doesn't have anything to do, it's like I say, overly broad. It doesn't specifically address the safety issues or health issues at all. As far as counseling as a condition of release from a mental health facility, again, the church doesn't get into the business of that. There are people that might have been in a health facility but come to us voluntarily, but again, that's a voluntary decision. It's not a condition of their release from a health facility, mental health facility. I will mention that I'm not that familiar with Americans with Disabilities Act issues, but it seems like we're starting to tread into areas that might be contrary to that legislation. But again, that's not an area that we're interested in getting into, and so we would agree to that condition. Another condition was violence counseling. The church is not interested in getting involved with violence counseling, and that's also a condition that we could agree to. I believe Ms. Wayman also did not want us to serve as a halfway house. That's also a condition that the church can agree to. And not a drug treatment center, again, that's a condition we can agree to. No domestic violence shelter, that's also a condition we can agree to. It looks like not a homeless shelter. We can agree to that condition. No overnight stays, we can agree to that condition as well. Again, all these conditions that we're agreeing to are with respect to that property at 511 Kent Drive. The final condition, as far as relinquishing by deed the easement, that to us seems completely unreasonable. It doesn't address any kind of public safety issue, and also is just irrational. There's no connection between that requirement and any of the 7 requirements that we need to prove to get a special use permit or special use on this property. So we can't agree to that, and again, it just is simply unreasonable. Thank you.
Okay, so to try to summarize, I'm going to ask for the town attorney's help to make sure I get everything correct. There was a list of concerns and conditions asked for. They addressed many of them, and we're again back at the point of whether we continue this public hearing or not. The opposition has asked that we continue the public hearing so they can bring their experts. So again, I'll ask the council if they would like to continue this public hearing or not, and to continue it, it would take a motion.
Mayor, perhaps you could ask Ms. Wayman again, having engaged in a...
Ms. Wayman?
Thank you so much. My big concern that I'm trying to get a condition is that they are offering services for a fee that is more of an office use. I appreciate their conditions. My court-ordered counseling condition was more making certain there's no violent offenders, that a judge says, sure, I'm going to release you. However, you have to go receive counseling. To me, it is a safety issue in our neighborhood. The safety component I was getting at with asking that they relinquish their easement right is they said they won't use the driveway, but they still have a right to use it. When people find that back door to that center, they're going to use it. People turn around in our driveway a lot. On the weekends when we're home, we get 5 or 6 people trying to go down there that end up turning around in our driveway. So that's how I know, and one of the reasons, if they're not going to use it, then they shouldn't question relinquishing their right to use it.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yes, with the mayor's permission.
Absolutely.
My concern with closing off the drive is how the heck is a fire truck going to get here if there's a problem?
In their statement of conditions, they stated that their fire service would be from St. Paul's Church. And our fire hydrant for the neighborhood is located at the corner of Kent and South Dixon. So I seriously doubt the fire trucks could run a hose from South Dixon to this property anyway. And I can find it in their statement where they said fire services would be provided from the St. Paul's Church parking lot.
I see Mr. Hale's coming up.
We've had that discussion with the fire department, and that is part of the reason for recombining the properties and providing public access to a public street, is the fire department would want that structure accessed off, or addressed off Union Street. If you look at the staff report, it's got a new Union Street address that's proposed, so the fire department would be accessing it and agreed they could access it from the St. Paul's Episcopal Church site.
I would like to know what uses the church intends to have for that driveway. Would it be like for house repair? I mean, what building repair? What is the purpose of keeping the driveway access?
Well, if the church ever changed its mind and we wanted to get it back into residential use, we'd have to repurchase an easement. So I mean, it's taking away the value of our property.
I see.
And especially when there's a much more cost-efficient way of addressing the issue, which by the testimony of Ms. Wayman, it has worked in that she can't name how many cars have come up in the last 6 months up that driveway. And I think what you're finding is there's a walkway from our parking lot, the current parking lot, to the building, and that is just a lot more easily used. Ms. Wayman just now said that people are turning around because it's not accessible. It's not easy to go up the driveway, or apparently that gate is working. So we just don't see an actual problem with that. And I just think it's unreasonable to make us give away property rights for an unneeded concern.
Mr. Smith.
I have a question for staff. You know, in light of some of the comments we heard about charging fees and, you know, being basically a business use or not, you know, when you talk about the land use plan, you're saying, the staff report is saying that, you know, this is typical of single-family detached or detached housing. What about, was the whole idea of services being rendered and paid for, which is more typical of a business use, you know, was any of that discussed in the staff report or in the staff meetings?
Churches are an unusual beast.
Yes, they are.
A lot of churches provide services, daycare, for instance. They'll provide daycare services or school services. All that falls on the umbrella in our ordinance as religious assembly.
I'm sorry,
that's religious assembly. I mean, that's that's an accessory use to the primary use of the property, and that's why we took the stance we did in the staff report.
Other questions?
May I make just a further comment in response to that issue? There's almost a perception that there's going to be new services added to that, and that's a misperception, because what we're doing is we're already offering a lot of these services at 221 Union Street. All we're doing is moving some of them to a few hundred yards away from where they're currently being provided. That's why we were asking the witnesses tonight if they've noticed any kind of problems in the past regarding the health and safety. And nobody offered any incidents where there has been, in fact, incident where there has been a danger to the public safety or health.
Other questions? Any advice from our attorney before we proceed?
What I'd like to do is just confirm the conditions that the applicant has agreed to, just so that we're sure we're all on the same page. And what I got down were no living in the home or overnight stays, no drug counseling, no counseling as a condition of release from mental health facility, no violence counseling, no halfway house, no domestic violence shelter, and no homeless shelter as the conditions the applicant's offering.
Does the applicant agree with that list?
I left out one condition that we also would agree to, and that was not on purpose. Apparently, not only we will agree also further that we will not provide services as a condition of release from a mental health facility, but also from a prison. I had not indicated a prison, and that was just unintentional.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Ms. Robinson?
I will make a motion to approve.
Before we
okay,
get
go ahead.
there, I think we
Okay.
have to close the public hearing first. Is that correct?
You close the comment portion, and council can discuss it at
Okay.
that point.
So I'm going to close the comment portion of the public hearing and ask, and let me follow my notes now. And open it back up to council members for questions or entertain a motion, and that's where you were going.
Yes, sir.
Back
Thank
to you, Ms. Robinson.
Okay, all right, please be patient with me. Okay, I make a motion to grant the application upon conducting a duly advertised public hearing and considering the application materials, the testimony, and the evidence presented at the hearing or otherwise appearing in the record, and upon considering the approval criteria of Section 3.8.3, I move that we approve the request and adopt the proposed resolution and permit, including the staff comments shown on the worksheet, as findings to support the determination that the proposed use meets all of the approval criteria set forth in Section 3.8.3. This approval shall include the following conditions. 1, the resolution and permit approved by the Town Council in this special use application shall be recorded with the Wake County Register of Deeds upon the expiration of the appeal period, per Section 3.8.4E of the LDO. The original recorded resolution and permit shall be returned to the Planning Department when received from the Registrar of Deeds. Number 2, minor alteration limited shall be approved by staff record the change in use of the existing building. And 3, a recombination plat shall be recorded with the Wake County Register of Deeds to recombine the subject property with the overall church property. And 4, the conditions presented by the applicant, including no drug counseling, no counseling for those released from a mental health facility or prison as a condition of release, no violence counseling, not used as a halfway house or a drug treatment facility, the facility not used for a domestic violence shelter or homeless shelter, no overnight stays permitted. And I think that is everything unless I've missed one.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Is there a second? And a second. And I'll ask the attorney in the discussion portion of this, did she get all the conditions?
I think she did.
Okay. All right. We have a motion, second. Further discussion?
Just, I'm not going to support it because I think if we had continued it and we got other expert witness, some of the other conditions would not have held. At the same time, I respect the recommendation because of the conditions made.
Okay.
My concerns, I guess, were the increase we've seen in group homes and stuff, especially throughout the area. And I think the conditions go above and beyond addressing those concerns and the concerns even of Ms. Wayman. The one condition, I guess, that gives me a little heartburn, and maybe it's because I just don't understand what it totally means, is the no domestic violence counseling part. You know, if there's a woman, for example, might want to come to the church for help and counseling. What do I do? Where do I go? Those kinds of things. Might this
If I
be able
said that, I might have misspoken, because that wasn't the condition. The condition was that it wouldn't be used as a shelter for people that are victims of domestic violence, which would be different from receiving counseling for domestic violence.
Or referral to interact.
Yeah, so I apologize if I misspoke.
Okay, that's how I was interpreting it. Not
Okay, I might have misspoken, so I apologize about that. Not used as a domestic violence shelter.
Shelter.
But,
Ms. Adcock, as the one who gave the second, that's the way you understood it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
I'll make a quick comment. I mean, I know the drive was an area of concern. I think the drive is necessary for any repairs to the building, because that sidewalk, I don't see how you get some of the equipment you need to make repairs to a house like that going down a narrow sidewalk. So that's the reason why I believe that we should keep that driveway there. And I was not concerned about the competition with the private sector, mostly because this is faith-based counseling, which is entirely different from secular counseling. So I think that is very different. And I don't see a problem with the fee-based structure there. I mean, look through it. It's similar to what other churches, charge for programs that have a cost associated with it. So I don't have a concern with any of those areas.
And I would just add, since you brought that up, Ms. Robinson, that I feel there was no evidence presented that says it truly is in competition with the private sector, because if you look on page 12 of the brochure, it talks about the fee is negotiated using a sliding scale based on income, and financial assistance is available. Medicaid and some insurance are accepted, and I would guarantee you that none of these providers in the Blue Cross Blue Shield network negotiate or use a sliding scale with the patient, because all their copays have been negotiated in advance with Blue Cross. So I think this group is actually meeting a great need that the private sector often cannot meet.
Okay. Any other comments?
One other comment I wanted to, I understand it had to be very difficult for Ms. Wayman to come here and to oppose something that obviously is within her neighborhood. And I thought she did a great job. My only other concern was that had I read the brochure as well and looking at the staff profiles, one of the profiles of the counselor that works there, and I don't know full-time, says that this person works with clients on issues such as depression, anxiety, and addictions. So I can see where Ms. Wayman would get to that point of being concerned. So I do hope that the conditions meet her needs and make her feel better.
Yeah, I mean, I think she did an excellent job articulating what her concerns were so that they could be incorporated and make this a better proposal.
Yep.
And Mayor, given the different wording of the conditions and the possibility that Ms. Robinson stated something differently than what everyone heard, perhaps once this passes, we could bring it back for ratification at the next council meeting.
Okay, very good. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Motion passes 5-1. Thank you for all those involved, and we'll see this at our next meeting for ratification?
We'll put it on the consent agenda.
For ratification?
Right, for
Okay.
ratification, right.
Very good. And thank you, Mr. Hales.
Thank you.
And this closes the quasi-judicial public hearing. We'll now move to all the new business. We're at item H1, the downtown theater item, and our engineering director, Mr. Bailey, will present this report. Mr. Bailey.
Good evening, Council. We're pleased to bring you this project as we're wrapping up the design, and there is a lot of information in the staff report. What I pretty much have is just a few graphics to describe some of these things that we can work through and see if there's any feedback or comment from Council before we proceed to the bidding stage. The project, the theater will be named The Cary, and it also covers the streetscape plan and some of the associated parking lot areas around the theater. This is a rendering that you've seen before. The theater is the building to the right in the darker color brick. We're doing an addition to the left, that is a 3-story building in a different color. Will have the appearance of 2 buildings, even though the lower floors will be connected. It contains the marquee that you see, and it contains a patio plaza area that's along the frontage and elevated of the addition building. This is the streetscape for this particular theater area, and it's extended along this entire block. And for the area that has the colored shading, we worked through a lot of changes to this plan and trying to simplify and incorporate things and to reduce cost. We are not, for example, modifying the intersection of Academy and Chatham at this time. It'll just be regular asphalt as part of this project. It uses some features for the crosswalks and some of the bricks that are in the surrounding areas. And I think, again, many of the things that we've seen and discussed before. Some of the crosswalk colors will be the reddish area that's in the Academy intersection that's shown on this particular slide. Then the center section, the English rose, will be used for the main sidewalk area. The pattern used within the sidewalk area of the theater will be just a standard herringbone pattern. This is a picture of Waldo Street where this pattern has already been installed recently. And that is all of the graphics and information we have. Staff would like receive any comments or feedback you may have relative to the project.
Okay.
Go back to the overview of the streetscape. On that, I see at the South Academy and Chatham Street intersection a different color pattern of brick where the pedestrians would cross. We had talked about doing that to distinguish where the crosswalks were. I had thought that we would also have those at the other crossings and where the sidewalk crosses the drives. And I just wanted to see if the council is interested in having that different color just to alert people that they're crossing over a street and not on a sidewalk. I say that because I've seen it like up off of Route 70, there's a shopping mall where they have a brick walkway where you're crossing over the street, but people sometimes just walk out blindly because they're still on the brick walkway. They think that they're still, have the pedestrian movement. So changing the brick color on those few spots might help keep people safer. It's just a thought I had, so.
Does staff foresee any cost increase if we change the color on a couple of little crosswalks?
Yeah, I don't think it'll make much difference. It's just a different brick material. Shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. Comments would be, love it, hurry up, motion to approve.
And I like second, and I like Ms. Robinson's suggestion about making those pedestrian crossings consistent with each other. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Smith?
Yep.
This may be, we hired a downtown manager from Oklahoma State, but I don't understand why we have burnt orange on the carpeting. I just want
It's not burnt orange, you're colorblind.
I think there's another motive there. That's what I think.
He's coming to defend himself.
Just know I'm paying attention,
You're colorblind, Jack.
And it's actually sort of a crimson red color.
Like a crimson tide.
Just a clarification, when you're talking about the pedestrian crosswalks or the crossings, are you only talking about the mid-block crossing?
I was actually referring to the mid-block crossing and the area where they're crossing a driveway.
I would recommend that we, crossing the driveway, we're continuous with the same brick pattern color. I think it gives a better visual appearance, and I think it can be safe.
Okay.
The thought on the mid-block crossing is that the intersection of Chatham and Academy was going to be identified by special brick pattern as a special intersection, whereas the other crossings, the mid-block crossing, for example, would be the English Rose or just a typical.
They're just average crossings.
Average crossing. So that was at least the thought process that we used.
That's fine.
Are those crossings raised? Are those crossings, that crossing with the lights at East Chatham, is that raised anymore, or it is not?
The intersection is not raised at this time. We do have our bond project, and assuming it passes, we will look at the design of Academy Street, and we may propose raising it at that time, but that'll be a separate process we will look at later.
And just so we're clear, the motion we have and the second, does that include just the at the theater crossing with different brick or what?
It did, but Ed makes a good argument to not do it. I got to tell you.
He's the expert.
You know, I love the little, what they've got here at the intersection that resembles what we have at the Cary Arts Center. I think that's fantastic. It's not a big deal breaker for me. I mean, I heard Ms. Robinson's argument and it made sense, and then Ed spoke and
And he made no sense.
Oh, 49, 51.
Clarification of the
Jack, where
motion.
are you?
Good.
my motion right now is what's been presented to us.
Okay, and who made the second?
I did, and I would just say that knowing how reasonable Ms. Robinson is, I bet she can live with that.
Sure.
All right, so everybody's in agreement of what was in the motion. Okay, all in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Bailey. We now move to item H2, the Technology Task Force appointments, and Mrs. Bush will present her slate of appointments for council's consideration.
All right, good evening. I'm very excited to share with you all that out of the 30 applications that we received for the Technology Task Force, I interviewed 13 of those 30, and I've presented to you on the staff report a list of 9. Now, I know we had agreed to 8, but let me tell you why there's 9. One of the interesting things about a task force is it, at least in the one that I was privileged to serve on for the town of Cary, is often the chair must remain the facilitator during times of brainstorming and as you're getting everyone's ideas. And although that person acts as a facilitator, a really good facilitator lets everybody else talk. I was only a facilitator a few times. So because of that, I've requested that we make that number 9. And as you can see, staff put together a great chart that shares with you the wide breadth and depth of everyone who I've recommended to council we appoint. Also, one thing that I think is very interesting that I would like to call out is you may not know many of the names. They are not perhaps the normal names that you see. And so there's a lot of great names on this group who've never had an opportunity to volunteer for the town. I think that's just another great and wonderful thing about Cary citizens is they want to give back, and a lot of them just found that this was the opportunity for them. So this slate of folks that you see before you, I present for your for recommendation and appointment to the Technology Task Force.
In form of a motion?
In the form of a motion.
Yeah, I'll second that.
There's a second discussion.
I would like to credit Ms. Bush for
Yeah,
interviewing
good job.
13 candidates for a board. That's pretty impressive. And I'm actually very pleased that you chose Mr. Ian Henshaw to chair this.
Actually, he's not the chair. Laura Hamlin is the chair. Ian will be helping in the facilitation.
Oh, it says chair. It says chair for Ian.
Oh, well, I must not have caught that. I guess Karen missed that line item, but that's fine. Is Ian still here? Are you willing to be a chair? Because I did not ask you. Yes, okay, there you go, okay.
You gotta love that stuff.
So
We're just moving with the punches here. So, thank you, Ian.
We have a motion and a second.
Right.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Good job, Lori.
Thanks.
We're moving to,
Well,
I'm sorry.
Just closing comments. I just think this is really a significant day. We have a chance, to live up to our reputation as a technology town. And I think with this group, I was really impressed reading all of the backgrounds. And you're right, Lori, a lot of the names I've never recognized. They're not the usual gang of suspects, as we like to call them. And I think it's exciting. You've got a good blend, and I wish you well. And I just think this speaks volumes for us for the future.
So you're coming to the meetings?
I doubt it. No, whatever, you know.
He wouldn't want to unduly influence the proceedings, Lori.
It's an evening, right?
I'm sure he'll watch it on YouTube.
Good luck.
Might learn something, Jack.
All right.
Might learn how to tweet.
Moving to agenda item H3. When Council Member Robison resigned, it resulted in several vacancies to town and outside groups that she served as an official Cary representative. Thanks to my council colleagues for your willingness to fill these vacancies. I'll serve as the third Planning and Development Committee member. Mrs. Bush has agreed to serve as the liaison to the Environmental Advisory Board, the Wake County Elected Officials Roundtable, and she'll be the alternate member on the Triangle J Board of Delegates. Mrs. Robinson has agreed to be our representative on the Triangle Transit Authority Board of Directors and the Triangle J Development and Infrastructure Committee. Mrs. Adcock agreed to be the alternate member of the Triangle J Center for Region Enterprises. The times of the Triangle J Water Resources Advisory Committee are difficult for every one of us. So I've agreed to serve as the interim, as our representative to this group. And if I cannot attend these meetings, then I'll obtain reports from our staff members who will always attend these meetings and stay up to date on their work.
Is that the new criteria for the replacement for Julie? We just need to ask them, are you available to attend the Water Resource Advisory Committee?
Well,
Question last week.
that was actually a question I had, kind of was, you know, obviously all these are filling the positions that Ms. Robison was doing. I would assume that when we select a new council member, will they then take up quite a bit of these and ease the burden on some of the others?
Well, we're gonna try to incorporate them. I know Laurie's going to have a heavy load with
That's what you told me.
two advisory boards, a technology task force, a bunch of Triangle J stuff.
That's
So
what you
she's
told
going to
me.
need some relief, and as well as the rest.
I'll give her some B12 shots. She'll be okay. Right?
So anyway, moving on to item number 5. At the beginning of the meeting, we added item 5 to old new business to consider switching the dates of the September Council and Operations Committee meetings. Mrs. Adcock will introduce this item as a council.
Did you miss number 4?
Did I miss number 4?
Volunteer.
H4,
Yes.
Excuse me.
No.
I'm still learning how to read. We'll move to item number 4.
No problem.
In my haste to get home tonight, I apparently skipped it. Mrs. Simpson will handle item H4, the report of the notice of voluntary dismissal on a lawsuit. Ms. Simpson, I am sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be quick. One of the town's reserve police officers was sued in his individual capacity, and the town's insurer provided a defense, and that matter's been settled and dismissed. And because we discussed it in closed session, we have to report it in open session. The release is attached to the agenda.
Okay, very good. We'll now move to item number 5, and as I said, it was added at the beginning of the meeting to switch the council meeting to the Operations Committee meeting, switch those dates, and I'll give it to Ms. Adcock.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank my colleagues for your flexibility. I apologize for having to ask you to do this, and I appreciate very much your helping me out. I move that council hold its first meeting in September on September 6th and hold the Operations Committee on September 13th.
A second.
There's a motion and a second discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Adcock. We'll move to item number 6. And Mrs. Bush's request, we pulled the condemnation resolution for the Southwest Street Utility Improvements Project from our consent agenda. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Bush for her questions of staff.
Mr. Bailey, would you give us a brief overview of this condemnation and where we are with respect to the staff and what the potential impact might be if we don't do this today and maybe look at some other options?
We are moving forward with the Southwest utility improvements, which is a major storm drainage line and some utility adjustments in response to some citizen requests in the area to deal with flooding through our normal policies. This particular property, 303 Robert Street, an easement is needed to place a storm drainage line along the property, along the edge of the property. And we are nearing the point, we are actually out to bids right now, and we'll be receiving bids and are scheduled to come direct to council at your second meeting in August. So a 2-week delay, it doesn't have a negative impact, but anything beyond that would negatively impact the schedule for the project.
And I know that we had the individual who spoke at Public Speaks Out. Okay, thank you. And I don't know if a 2-week delay would help that citizen at all, or if you're just totally opposed to the current process. Is it possible for the homeowner to speak?
Mr. Bailey, would you like to speak to that, of your conversations or staff's conversations with the property owner?
I do not know the property owner's current plans to investigate and address their structural foundation problems, so I can't really address that. I think that probably would take a considerable period of time, but I do not know for certain.
So, in your opinion, 2 weeks' time is not going to really address that issue?
In my experience, to get that work done and make repairs would normally take the town longer than that to do that work.
But the work on the road isn't, when is that scheduled to begin? In late fall?
We would bring bids to you in August, and usually it takes about 4 weeks from the time you award a bid and all the contracts are signed and we issue notice to proceed. So it would begin in September, late September.
September.
Well, I also spoke with the property owner who spoke earlier, property owner here, and there was some concern regarding kind of being hit with that condemnation notice late, not having time to possibly get some other evaluations, foundation, structural evaluations. I'm actually kind of familiar with this. We've had it done at our business in the past where they actually went in and put in helical piers and stuff. I don't know that 2 weeks is enough time to actually get people to come out and look. I will tell you in my experience with some of these folks that do foundation repair, you know, yeah, they're going to come out and look at your foundation and they're going to find a problem because they're going to try to sell you foundation repair work. And we got estimates all across the board. So bottom line is that the property owner has an existing foundation issue and is very, very concerned that this project may further exacerbate that problem. And I just don't know, is there a way to get some type of assurance that the contractor, that the town obviously subs this out to a private contractor to do the repairs. The private contractor is who is ultimately responsible for any damages caused to Ms. Alderman's property. How do we ease her concerns or somehow get her the assurance that should the vibrations or the construction or whatever cause further damage to her property, that the contractor will resolve those problems?
We believe we have those measures in place within the contract. We have offered for an analysis or an investigation to determine all the current damage, and then with photos and all those types of things. And so we would have a record of what it was when we started. And then if there's further problems, then we will have that record and we can share it with the contractor's insurance company. And you know, I'm comfortable that we can convince the insurance company with those types of records that if something did occur, that there's repairs that need to be made. Again, we can't force the insurance company to do anything. They have their own claim adjusters and those types of things, but the process would be in place, and we have considerable levels of insurance for coverage on these types of contracts that's required. So I think the mechanisms are in place. We just can't predict the outcome, but I'm comfortable that it's fairly certain that you know, it would be a positive outcome if there were further damage. We are hopeful that we will take measures that we will not have further damage in that short time frame while we're there. You know, the foundation, some of the original inspection reports are quite old, back to you know, 2011, and you know, it's been apparently stable during this time, and we hope it will remain stable. And one of the things the inspection will do is when we're in there looking around, taking photos, if we find something so on the verge of failure, then we will back up and take additional measures by change order with the contractor to safe that up so that, that our work will not make damage. But until we get in there, get that third-party structural engineer to do the work and get that information, we just can't comment on the existing condition beyond what we know right now.
Yeah, but in your professional experience and opinion, you're confident that should the construction further exacerbate the problem, that there are measures in place to resolve that?
Yes, we've had an excellent record when we had these reports and investigations in the past. We do it a lot for well example. We'll do well testing to see what the pumping rate is and what contaminants are prior to us doing work. And when we've had that evidence and then it changed during the course of the contractor, the insurance company has always stepped up and taken care of things. That's the type of information they need instead of just hearsay. That really helps in those situations.
Well, this, the work that you were just talking about, taking pictures and doing this in, evidence gathering before, does this happen with all the properties or only the
No.
properties where, that they raise these types of issues?
It's where there's a concern raised or we believe there is some unusual situation. We will offer it as an option to the homeowner if they allow us to do the work.
And was this offered on the condemnation that we have before us?
Yes, it's already in the contract that we are bidding as a unit price item to obtain that third-party inspection, both before and after.
I think we've been there, done that. This is not new. I mean, I think the point that Mr. Bailey said is when you have a special case, you put the preventive measures in that protect both the town and the landowner, because we've had abuses of that. So the good news is that you get a level playing field when you start. You get the photos, you get that, you get your insurance involved. I really, with all due respect, think we have to move forward with the nature of the thing, and the protections are there for both the town and the landowner.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve the staff report as noted in the consent agenda and move forward.
Here's the motion. Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion. Discussion.
I agree with Jack. I mean, our staff is saying that they are committed to making sure that any damage that might happen, which is not guaranteed that damage will happen, but if damage happens, it'll be corrected. And we've heard that this is a necessary project, so I think we need to move forward.
It's a very necessary project. And to her credit, Ms. Olderman has actually stated on numerous occasions that she's one that stands to benefit the most from this project, as do a lot of other folks in the neighborhood. We've been working very hard to address a lot of our stormwater issues in our older areas of town. I think we're making good progress, and this is one of those examples. So that's my comments.
Other comments, questions?
My only additional comment, and I thank you, Mr. Bailey, for all the information. It's always difficult for me to condemn somebody's property, right? I always hope that you could have a win-win and everyone can agree before the town has to take it. And that's obviously never the objective of the town. And so I am very disappointed that we couldn't get to a win-win. I always try to strive for that. And I also take to heart the property owner's comments about, feeling like she wasn't heard. And I think that also speaks to, no matter what however anyone perceived it, when a citizen doesn't feel heard, then somebody's not doing their job. So I just feel like whether it's, the property owner not maybe hearing everything that the staff said, or maybe the staff not relaying it in the best way, there was a miscommunication. So I'm disappointed about that, but I do think the work needs to be done. It's already out for bid, and I think that the staff providing the extra work and the extra documentation and give some assurances is probably the best that we can do.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. We do not have a closed session this evening, and if there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.